Hello, everybody. Welcome to People Talking Sitting Down, episode number 3. First and foremost, thank you guys so much for listening. Not only this episode, but everybody who's listened to the first 2 episodes and loved and supported me through this entire journey, especially everybody who's reading the Healing Project weekly updates. Thank you. Thank you so much. Without your love, support, I wouldn't be able to be doing this. And I'm eternally grateful. That being said, episode number 3. For this conversation, I sit down with a good friend of mine, Tyler. Tyler and I met only just like 6 months ago, and we worked together in the remote and corporate world. We're both in sales, so got along, pretty well, pretty quickly. And there's something really special about Tyler that I could sense even just through, a Zoom screen. Tyler is an incredible human being who's dealt with some incredibly tough stuff, and he's gotten through it. And his spirit and perspective through all of this is absolutely beautiful. It was something that I was very interested in learning more about. So Tyler was kind enough to fly out here from California over to Philadelphia to sit down and have this conversation in person. So Tyler, thank you. And for everybody else, a couple of the topics that we talk about in this discussion are Tyler's perspective on growing up on the West Coast, coming over here to the East Coast for a little bit of college, then also visiting here in Philadelphia. We talk cheesesteaks and some other good stuff. We also talk about different things like working from home, having a remote job, the pressures of being in sales, wanting to work. A couple other things that we talk about are the perspective that Tyler's gotten from things that he's had to deal with in his life, which unfortunately included losing a family member at a really, really young age. Tyler's ability to think through this, not only when he was a kid, but still to this day, is incredible. Dealing with death is not something that, I fortunately have not had to deal with too much in my life. And when I have, it's been insanely painful and incredibly tough. And for Tyler to be able to deal with this at the age that he did, it's impressive. It's impressive. So I want to thank Tyler for coming on to share his story. As the theme of this podcast is talking about mental health, talking about the way that we deal with things in life, and peeling back the layers of the human experience. Tyler's lived an incredibly beautiful life at such a young age, and his perspective is something that I feel honored to be able to share with all of you guys. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this conversation with Tyler. I know some of these conversations are a little bit long, but there's a reason for it. If you would like to support this podcast in any shape or form, please subscribe on YouTube at People Talking Sitting Down, at Instagram at People Talking Sitting Down, and follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and anywhere else you guys find your podcasts. Thank you. I love you guys, and I appreciate it. So let's talk about it. Let's be about it. I'll see you. I want to preface this conversation with a warning that we will be discussing difficult and sensitive topics throughout this episode. Terms or topics that we use during this episode may be viewed as inappropriate if viewed or listened to out of context. This podcast focuses on the past, the present, the future, and our ever-changing reality. My hope is, always has been, and always will be to continue to grow, learn, and change. I believe that when we stop changing, we die. Therefore, it is likely, if not guaranteed, that in the future, parts of this conversation will not age well. I know that, and I accept it. From the bottom of my heart, I ask for your acceptance, for your kindness, your understanding, and for your time. For I am a flawed human interviewing flawed humans, searching for answers to questions that I know I may never find. I want to thank you for joining us on this journey to find a bit of light in the unavoidable darkness of life. Welcome to People Talking Sitting Down. I hope it's worth your time. So that's the other thing is like we can start it whenever. So it's also like, I don't even know when the actual start of the podcast is going to be.
That's the other beautiful aspect. Yeah. I almost feel like we're kind of in the groove immediately right now.
Yeah.
And we haven't even really realized it.
Dude, that's why I love that. I just love the headphones.
Yeah, you're right. I was skeptical at first, but now I see the way. Do you know the way? Now I know the way.
Well, by far the most hectic of the 3 episodes that I've started, as far as the coffee spill, as far as me trying to get my 17 drinks, organize, coasters, everything.
How are you interfacing with that?
I like how you say that. How are you interfacing? Honestly, what does that even mean? I know you asked that question last night. How are you interfacing?
That's a great, not combative question, but response question back, just because you're right. I guess now that you say that, I do kind of use interface as like a filler word in the sense of like, how are you dealing? How are you managing? How are you interpreting? How are you making decisions based off of XYZ? Like just overall, like, what do you feel? What do you think?
Yeah. Honestly, it's funny when you said dealing with it, like that's the word that pops into my head is like, all right, how are you dealing with it? How are you dealing with whatever you're literally dealing with it? But it's so much more complex. It's more like, trying to think of the right word, but, it's more grandiose of a word. It's
yes.
like, not only how are you dealing with it, it's like, how are you feeling about it? How are the people around you feeling about it? How are you attacking? How are you thinking about it? It's just like so much more than like, oh yeah, I'm dealing with it.
Oh, thank you. I guess that's like a good compliment in the way is I actually have to credit my, well, I had multiple years, but he was my third grade teacher and then was like my English, like language arts teacher in like middle school. And we also had like, handwriting classes and things of that nature. Like I did like cursive all the way through like 8th grade, but like
you did cursive.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Yeah. Like we learned it. It was like a 1 class per grade, like super small private school. It was like basically the same kids every single year. And like, we just grinded like really hardcore. Like we were reading like high level books early. I remember I read Catcher in the Rye in like 5th grade. And it was just like my like I credit like all my verbal output to like that guy, I would say. It was just like insane, like what we were like doing at that age, like compared to other kids, like the material, like even just being like, yeah, like this sounds kind of crude, but like, here's a Bible. We're going to practice cursive for like an hour.
Yeah.
Like just find something like go to whatever book you want, whatever verse you want, just start practicing.
Have you seen my handwriting?
Yeah, I actually have seen it a little bit. Mine's not impressive. I'm not saying mine's impressive by any means. It's just like, it was more of an efficiency thing.
And a practice.
Yeah, like a ritual, I guess. Looking back, it's like more a ritual.
Because dude, mine's so bad.
Can I take a look?
Yeah.
Oh, this isn't that bad. I can read it. There's people you can't even read it, dude.
Yeah.
This is great.
But it's like it looks like still in like 3rd grade. But yeah, it is funny. No, the other thing about those books, like it's funny, all those books, and again, this is what I think about the school system, the intentionality behind it. Like there's a reason that you read all of those books. Like 1984, I remember that being like a 6th grade book. I honestly, again, I didn't read any of these books. I would always just do like I was saying about doing my homework the other night when we were talking. Mm-hmm. I was like, I was a last minute on the bus, like cliff notes, like, I just like bullshitted the entire thing. But those books are definitely, those are intense for like a 13-year-old.
Yeah. Actually, the 1984 thing, you got around to it much earlier. Like we didn't get that book until like early high school, which I think is, obviously like through like the lens of like brain development, you get a bit more time to kind of mature and like maybe put some things together. Cause even still, like looking back at, like I said, I read Catcher in the Rye, like 5th grade, just like some of like the prostitute scene in there, for example. It's just like, I was just a little young to like kind of not necessarily like interface with it. Like speaking of the word interface, but more of like, I'm like, dude, I don't get it because like I'm a 5th grade virgin. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, why am I reading this book? Like, it doesn't matter.
It's interesting the way that, again, and then they put the responsibility of the 5th grade teacher to be communicating that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The Giver was huge too.
Tell me about that. I've never, like, again,
really?
None of these, like, I didn't read any of the assigned reading. I was telling you the other day, like,
oh, that's right.
I like my reading, comprehension probably isn't great. And I have to like reread so many times. It was so hard. So I was like, no, I'm just not going to do it.
Are you familiar, or how familiar are you with like the story or like the plot line of it?
Zero. The Giver, I just know it's a classic. That's it.
And to be fair, like I actually haven't seen the movie. I'm aware that I'm pretty sure there's a movie. I would love to give it a go. But that book, I obviously going to forget some details. I don't want to spoil the whole thing either, but I don't even know if the word like utopian is right, but it's almost like a parallel universe of existence where like a lot of the things that we, again, to loop back to the word interface, or we just like deal with in our life, like we take for granted, we just see, do, feel, they're non-existent in this world. And essentially like you follow the protagonist's journey of essentially breaking out of that world. And it's fascinating, especially for like the young child mind, I think, because your creativity is so much higher. You're not like fully developed. Your consciousness is like a little bit different. Like you don't understand the world fully. And it has like this imaginative, like creative, like it's just a perfect timing for it. Like when you were a kid, like there's kids, they have like imaginary friends, or like they draw things that that come to their mind. And like, there's like that mystical element of like childhood. Like when you combine them, that book at the right time, it was just so insane. I remember just not wanting to put it down. And like, I mean, I read a lot of books, but there's something about that one. I was like, dang, this is sweet.
It's so, it's funny. Just two totally different experiences of like, cause now I'm all like, I mean, you can literally turn around and like, there's those books, like there's some of those early classics that are, like the Grapes of Wrath and shit like that. Like now I get to read those as an adult for the first time ever, which is what I'm really excited about because again, it's kind of like getting me a little bit of that more like child imagination at this point in my life, which is definitely interesting.
And even not even like in the childhood sense, like even now, like I know we got each other, or I got you on the Daily Stoic, Ryan Holiday, good little 1-pager every day.
Yeah, not bad. Dude, so I guess we'll get into the topics and the note cards that I really lean on here. But first off, like deadass, like thank you for
absolutely,
because it's an absolutely outrageous. I know we'll get into later, how we met, how we very briefly worked together, and the things that we dealt with working from home in the online world. But like it's so beautiful, magical, like literally magical is probably the best word, that we met. And I always say this, working from home, you're on a Zoom, like you're in California, we're living two totally different lives. And we log on every day, and I would usually, whenever you woke up and hit me with a good morning, I'd be like, dude, like you're starting your day and I'm like 3 hours ahead, and I have already, done all these things that you're about to do. And like, that's just what was going on in my head when, you're working for the same organization, but you're halfway across the world, really. I mean, you're all the way across on the other coast. But how, and I know this is like what I'm most excited about, your perception of Philly, expand more. And I want to hype Philly up because the way the rap that it gets for being such a nasty place, and the people here, I mean, you've just had a completely different experience.
Yeah. And for context too, this is my second time to the city of Philadelphia. Last time was a few years ago. I can't even really remember. It was like for one day, went to the Eastern State Penitentiary. Highly recommend if you haven't gone, especially if you love historical stuff. But yeah, this time's been, I mean, I like to go into trips and just places with no expectations. Cause if you have no expectations, then it's like a lot harder to be disappointed. Right. Yeah. And then also on the other side, if things go really good, it's like that much better. And, we were on that side significantly. Like everyone I've come across has been so nice. Like they're going out of their way to say hi, be respectful, like help people. Like even in the airport, like there's some guy who's like clearly on a rush. Look, he was going like on a business flight trying to get something, but just the way we were walking, we were going to cross paths, and he like stopped. He's like, no, please go. And then like even people just holding doors around here, everyone just striking up conversation on the street. Yeah, everyone in Philly has been super nice, super rad. And I would say the saying, the city of brotherly love, is very accurate so far. I definitely look forward to coming back. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah, dude, it's one of the coolest places. I moved down here probably 6 months ago, and growing up, living, like I mentioned, with like farm animals like 100 yards away. It's a totally different way of living, but it is, it's nice. And like you said, again, with the spring being like, all right, spring's coming, like maybe people are opening up a little bit, because I'm dead ass. Like for the whole winter, it was so cold. Nobody talked to each other. Nobody said anything. And it's not like a rude thing. It's just like everybody's just kind of like getting through it. And it's like, all right, that's, come on. Like where's the sun?
Chugging along.
Yeah. Yeah. But cheesesteaks.
Oh,
give me your review.
I guess for further context, last time I was here, for the Philly locals out there, I went to D'Alessandro's. That place was the bomb. Loved that spot. But tried the very classic like Pat Gino's rivalry this time. I got to be careful what I say here. I got to tread the waters lightly to not severely offend any lovers of one or the other. But I will say Gino's took the cake for me. Gino's was great. Upside of Pat's though, it's like the convenience factor. You can use a credit card there. But yeah, like Gino's cash only, but man, that sandwich was a lot better, I thought. Not saying Pat's was bad. I just really liked Gino's.
Oh, I thought Pat's was awful.
Okay, fine. I'll side with you. Pat's was terrible. Please don't kill me.
We don't have to pull any punches here. But yeah, dude, I mean, I'd never had Pat's before either. So it was definitely an interesting experience for me. But dude, also don't worry. Sorry, like quick time, but like don't worry about the cameras. Like think about it. Like,
oh yeah,
because you'll fully see everything. So like it'll see you like looking into the camera, like just pretend we're talking to
Okay.
or not pretend we are talking to each other, but like don't worry about what anybody thinks, how you're looking.
That's interesting you bring that up because I think about the eye contact aspect of like, because I feel like they're here with us right now. There's like an audience right there, you know?
Yeah, it's funny you said that, and it's funny. Maybe there's just there are two schools of thought on it, and it's not even and one's not right, one's not wrong, because like that, like what you said was the biggest compliment about when I sent you the little clip that Max sent to me about the eye contact and how like even with the volume off, the level of like interest and just like locked in, and I guess that's the way that I do it. That's what makes me comfortable, honestly, because I'm so nervous about what people think. So I don't even want to acknowledge that people are going to listen to this. I'm just fucking stoked to have, like, I feel most comfortable here.
Gotcha.
But maybe you feel it differently.
Maybe it's an inherent like entertainment perspective, almost like a feeling like I need to perform, even though we're just talking, doing our own thing. It's like inherently like this is an act of like a performance, right?
Yeah.
And I guess wow, you're getting me to dig really deep. I think it's hard for me to love something more than like a fantastic performance. Like it doesn't even have to be my own performance, but it could be something I know nothing about, but like you can tell when like somebody puts like 110% down. It could be like athletic, artistic, just anything, but like a solid performance is just like, you can't help but respect it, you know?
Yeah. And life, I mean, we were talking yesterday. I mean, that's how I've begun to view life, and not as a performance per se, but it's a story.
Yeah.
You know, your entire storyline, like everything. And I said this to somebody the other day. I was like, well, if we all got to like relive this again, like wouldn't you rather just be like nice and just
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like not having to relive like being a fucking dickhead to somebody. And unfortunately, like obviously we've all been dickheads to people. So like gonna have to relive that at some point. But I don't know. It's funny how many different views of life there are and like ways to go about it. But what would you say outside of not only like enjoying the time here in Philly, but like what's the difference between the East Coast, the West Coast? I know you spent a little bit of time here in your first year of college, and you know, how would you compare and contrast that?
It's a great question.
Because growing up in California, to me, is like insane. Like it's a different country. Like it's like, and not only it's bigger than many countries, but it's a totally different vibe. The few times that I've been out there, I'm like, dude, this is like, it's like La La Land. Like everybody's just fucking chilling.
I mean, that's actually a nickname for LA, like because La La is like LA, La La Land. So it's funny you mentioned that. And I will even say like California in and of itself is like multiple different states. If you like look at it as its own country.
Yeah.
Like the three big cities like San Diego, San Francisco, like LA, they're all so different from one another. I feel like the people, even like the weather, the activities, the things that you do, they're all really, really unique. And for context, I was born, I grew up like my whole life in San Diego. So that's like the lens that I come at it through. Like I can't speak what it's like to be like a native East Coaster and then come to California. So I guess just through my lens, like obviously the weather's like a big factor, but at the same time, I don't mean that in a bad sense. Like I mean that in a great sense of just seasonality, because we have that a little bit, but it's not like drastic or overly noticeable. But like the colors here, if there's ever like any energy or something deeper that could occur because of like changing of the seasons or like anything like that could affect like the human experience, like it's magnified here so much more. So I think that's what I'm probably drawn to the most. And then also too, like it's hard to deny that like some foods are significantly better here, like sandwiches, pizza, A+. But obviously if it's Mexican food, I got to stick with home. But I guess beyond like the superficial things, I think you're right. Like you were saying, like the La La Land, just chilling aspect to it. I think the pace of life here is like a lot more fast.
You even said that about me walking.
Yeah. And yeah, you were flying. Yeah. And I thought I walked like kind of decently fast. At least when I'm around home, I feel like I walk faster than most people. But yeah, it's another cadence of step here. That's for sure. Like more drive, not more drive, but just like there's a higher sense of go, go, go.
Yeah.
Which can be great and not so good depending on what you're dealing with, right?
Yeah. Have you spent any time down south, like Louisiana, like really getting down, like even like southern, like Georgia, like that kind of that kind of area?
Never lived down there or like did months or anything down there. But I had a good friend of mine. He swam at Auburn in Alabama, actually. And I went down and saw him a few times, and it was just buck wild, first of all. But Southern hospitality, like a very real thing. Very hot, very humid. The food, unreal. I know I was just giving Philly a bunch of props. Everyone was super nice, but down there it's like next level, like give you the shirt off your back sort of thing, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's like family. And
yeah,
honestly, the food. So I have cousins. I've got 19 cousins on one side, and I've got cousins that live down in Louisiana. I went to visit my aunt and uncle, and I gained, I think in 3 days, like 13 pounds. Like they just could, like it was like you wake up 8 a.m. Like you get woken up 8 a.m. Like I was like right out of college, and I was just like, whoa, okay, all right. Like I didn't know I was getting told what to do here on my vacation, but it was like 8 a.m. You're up, breakfast is ready. It's like getting the cobwebs out, and immediately you're eating. And then once you're done eating, you like have snack time, and then once you're done snack time, you just have lunch, and then you have another like drinks and snacks session, and then you're like getting ready for dinner, and then you just have like a massive dinner. And I mean, all of that food is so good, so heavy, so and rich, and like really rich in taste. It's almost like the cheesesteak at Geno's in like every meal, like that, like that taste of like, holy shit, there's something in there, some secret sauce.
Love.
That's a good, like not even joking, that's a good way of putting it. I really do think that they like legitimately love cooking more down there, and it's more of an art. It's more of a part of the family lifestyle. I probably would assume, this is me just guessing, that also has to do with like religion, and that, you know, after church on Sundays, like everybody gets together, everybody cooks and has meals together. Friday night football like is another thing like that, where, you know, probably a lot of food, tailgating around that. And like, at least us here, like we don't really, food's good, but it's not like an event. The cooking process, to me at least, doesn't seem like it's part of hanging out or getting together, but like you kind of get together around the table in those areas of the country is how I feel.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, like the ritual behind it. Like there's something special about like rituals and habits that, like regardless of what it is, like it sets like the intentionality, it sets the tone for whatever it is you're about to do. Like what are some habits or rituals that like you have that you think are super helpful or you just like to partake in?
Oh, I mean, I don't even know if I would like to call them habits or rituals. It's probably a little bit of a healthier relationship with them, but I just call them like addictions, because I mean, for me, it's my like meditation in the morning. I don't know if you saw me when I woke up this morning, like make my bed immediately. Like it's gotta be nice. It's gotta be chilling. But bed, meditation, journal, which I didn't do this morning, I don't think. Maybe forgot, whatever. And then I actually recite a poem to myself, or two different poems to myself. And then I check my phone. So I try to do all of that before checking my phone, just so I can get like, again, first hour of the day, I just like to have like be in my head instead of check a text message and then immediately be like caring about what somebody else said. And that's what I said about, you know, not working in this time, being like, all right, like I don't have to stress about a Slack message coming in. Like I would wake up and be like, holy shit, like I got to check Slack immediately. It was my first thought of the morning. My first thought of the morning was, I have to check Slack. Like, how much does that suck?
Yeah.
Like that is like we're human beings, we're animals in this crazy, beautiful world. And my first thought in the morning was, I have to check Slack. And like, I think that's such a depressing thing that I, you know, now have been mindful of. But when I was in it, I didn't realize that as much. So like, I've definitely tried to keep the first hour of the day. And honestly, that keeps me very, very consistent and straight with my day. But also, like when it doesn't happen, that's the part where it's an addiction for me, because if I don't do it, I'm not right. But if it's a habit or a ritual, if you don't do it, it's just, you're chilling, you're still fine, you're still all good. But for me, I got to get a healthier relationship with that. But how about for you?
I like, first and foremost, I think that I'm not a pro at this yet, but I've been trying to get a lot more just conscious over like just making the bed. And I can't give like the credit to where I first heard this. I think it was a Navy SEAL captain giving a speech at like the University of Texas commencement.
General McCraven, I believe.
I think you might be right. Yeah. I think it started with an M. But just like the sheer aspect of like, you go have the worst day ever, but you just came home and like, hey, well, my bed is like pristine. I get to climb in that thing when it's all said and done and like try again tomorrow, like reset. Like, it sounds so like black and white and simple on paper, but when you actually kind of get some of those things in practice, it makes like a huge difference. I would say another big one too for myself, just drinking water and not having coffee right away when I wake up.
Interesting.
Just giving my body some time to wake up before I just stress it out even further. And I guess like complementing that point too, I empathize with you on checking Slack right away in the morning. And I guess it was, to hear you say it from your perspective is actually very helpful because you're on East Coast hours. Whereas for myself, like I was working on West Coast time, not like 9 to 5 West Coast, but like trying to adapt for East Coast hours on the West Coast schedule. So sometimes I was waking up like right before 7, and the first thing I'm doing is like that early checking my phone, and I'm about to prepare to get on the computer. And I found that like that wasn't like the healthiest option or the most efficient. Like I got way better work done when I took the time to have a morning walk, maybe go stretch, have plenty of water, like get good food in me, like journal, read the Daily Stoic, like we just talked about, or just little things like that. Take care of yourself and get ready to go. Yeah. Like we were on a run earlier. We were talking about centering. It's just like, it has to come back to centering. Otherwise, like the habit or the rituals maybe not serving you most ideally.
Interesting. The way that I think about it is being like not only being in control of your day, but attacking your day. So like it's doing like in my eyes, in my opinion, all right, you're getting ready for war. You're getting ready to go to war every day. And that's what I feel like is business. Like business is war without bullets. It's like, I don't know. I think I read that in a book. So this sounds way cooler than like I could ever come up with. But it is. And like, if you're going to prepare to go to war, you got to get ready. And like, that's how I always felt was when I woke up and checked Slack, I didn't get ready. I didn't get dressed. I didn't get, I wasn't, like my mental, I wasn't ready. So to be able to get up in the morning, again, like do that morning, ritual is the right way to put it, but, morning routine. And then, going for a walk, getting outside, getting used to, again, like we've been talking about energy a lot this weekend and getting outside to get the energy from the world versus, you see, it's a nice little glass box to live in, but it's tough when you just wake up, stay in here. Sometimes if I don't get outside until 2 p.m., it's like, bro, there's a whole world going on out there and I'm just sitting in here typing away.
It's easy to get lost in the sauce.
Yeah. But one of the most fun things that we've talked about as far as East Coast versus West Coast, so you not only swam, but you also surfed. And now you told me a couple weeks ago, which was like an outrageous comment to just slip in. Like, oh yeah, by the way, like I'm like kind of getting ready for like the paddleboard world championships. So how did that come about? What are you doing to prepare for that? And when is it again?
It's gonna be the end of July.
Okay.
I guess long story short, one of my good childhood friends, we still surf together all the time. He's just finishing up his swimming career. He stuck through all the way through college, so I can't say the same. But essentially, like his mom owns the race. So I've just always thought, like, how cool would it be to like put all the water time in my life to something? And essentially the race it's in Hawaii. You paddle from the island of Molokai to the island of Oahu. You like arrive at like Honolulu Harbor, basically is what it sounds like. It's 32 miles. You're just paddling the whole time. You're not standing up, you're laying down. And they have like boats that'll like follow you to come through the channel to like make sure it's safe. It's like 32 miles. Anything happens, obviously, it can be like arguably like dangerous stretch of water at times from what it sounds like.
So you're laying down?
You're laying down.
And paddling.
Yeah, it's like you're swimming, but like on like a 12 to 18 foot needle.
On a board.
Yeah.
So no paddle.
No paddle.
Your hands are the paddle.
Your hands, yeah. Hands and arms, yeah. So I've been recording my training, trying to convince her to like put me in as like, and she's like, yeah, I just need to see like a physical commitment. So I've just been paddling more, staying on top of like all my other like physical activities, just trying to be like well-rounded, like trained, like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what barriers and or goals she'll put down. Like if you want like to see XYZ by like whatever date, like we just got to get it done and smash it,
Yeah. Do you think you do it? I
would love to do it. Yeah, it'd be awesome. I think it's just because there's a comfortability aspect to it too. It's not just like, oh, I want to do this really like insane thing because it's cool, but it's familiar because all I've done is spin my arms in circles basically my entire life. So it just seems like another version of doing that. But in like a very cool sense.
Yeah.
Like very different than like looking at tiles on the bottom of a pool and like not hearing anything.
Another like just such a dumb question, and this is like my just like childhood curiosity coming out, or childlike curiosity coming out, is you're you have goggles on when you're swimming. I was like, wait, you're opening your eyes when you're swimming, looking at the tiles, but that's interesting. I've never thought about that, because the way that I and this is like kind of my next topic, but the what surfing does, what swimming does for your, like, I view that as meditation. I have a good friend who's always like, dude, I can't meditate. I'm like, dude, you've been playing guitar your whole life. You've been meditating that entire time. Like, that is a meditation. It is a getting lost in a rhythm and your thoughts and your focus. And it's like just getting into a flow state. That is meditation. I was mentioning to you, this to me is meditation, because I get lost in it. And it's like it's a comfortable, like, I feel at ease. I'm just like, I'm there. But which of maybe swimming versus surfing being a little bit more meditative, or how can you just talk me through, I guess the question is like, what does that do for your mental? What does that do for your thoughts? Like, how does, you're out there in the ocean for hours, just you and the waves?
Yeah, that's a really good question, first of all. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I will say, like, the two for myself personally, like on the mental side, like very fundamentally different. I don't swim any longer, because it's a brutal sport, and I'm not just, I have other activities I'd rather willingly do than just go swim a bunch of miles. But growing up through like the younger years and then high school, and then even just like trickling into the beginning of college with swimming, it was very easy to turn your brain off, because you're not really like having to pay attention to your surroundings or developing changes. Like, what the practice is, what the set is. And at a certain point, you just kind of go on autopilot, and you're just like, you'll change speeds, you'll change your intensity without even really like recognizing it, because it's all you've done. And it's just super easy to get lost in your head, and because you can't hear anything, right? You just hear the water sloshing around you. You might have your eyes closed for a second, or even doing like a flip turn. It's like turbulent noise. So you're just in your own world. So I think that led to like a lot of time to have introspection and thinking, reflection, and maybe even at times some overthinking, because you really have nothing else that's going on except for you and your thoughts. One of the coolest things I experienced like on the swimming front that kind of changed that up was like an underwater speaker one of our coaches had.
Wow.
You could play music, and you could hear it underwater, and it made a big difference, because it kind of took that like element of overthinking out. And I think as I've gotten older, maybe I spent a lot of time maybe thinking too much when I was swimming, and I but it would have been more ideal to be in that flow state of just shutting off a bit more, which at a certain point you get to when you're really beaten up. Like, if it's a really hard practice, you're there. But surfing, way more creative of an outlet, because you're having to respond to variables as they happen real time. Like, no wave is ever the same. The way it breaks, the way the water's moving, all those factors, like the line that you choose to take, like all those things come together of like how you're going to kind of draw your paintbrush, I guess you could describe it as. So you have to think, you have to be present a lot more. So that side of things was a better way to just fully tune out. But it didn't have the same physical rigor that led to, so I'm sure you've experienced this too. Whenever you do anything that's extremely, extremely, like physically demanding, like you feel so good after.
Yeah.
All those feel good hormones. You have that with surfing too, but I feel like I couldn't really get there as easily unless I did it like the whole day. And that's just not realistic.
It's really interesting what you said about being present in the water, because my first thought is, when you're talking about that, is that surfers obviously have like a very cool reputation as cool people, cool guys. Like, and I don't know if that's just like a Hollywood thing, but I would assume, and also the surfers, the people who surf that I've met, mostly aligns with that. But being out there in the water so much with your own thoughts, the way that I'm tying this together in my head is like, those guys know themselves, because they've been out there with their minds, for a very, like hours and hours and hours, hundreds, thousands of hours of their life. It's been them, their thoughts, and the waves. So they get to know themselves on an entirely different level. And that is confidence. Confidence is cool. So I wonder if there's like, that adds into the personality of surfers of, because is that reputation true, or is that just something that's kind of made up?
I mean, I can only speak from my like own experience. Mm-hmm. I don't, definitely not a person that thinks like anyone or any group should be like on a pedestal, but yeah, like, I'd say that's very like, like common like stereotype or thought, like, oh, surfers are just like so cool, like they do all this stuff. But it's like we're really just like other people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you're only able to do the activity because of like where you just happen to be placed geographically. It has like nothing to do with like who you are as a person. It's just like, oh, if I was born in this spot or I moved to this place, it allows me to do that activity. But then I guess I might contradict myself about how it affects who you are. But I would say surfing inherently is like kind of a selfish sport because it's just you, right? You want to catch as many waves as you can because it's fun. And the more waves you catch, the better you get.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like tenacity, like sometimes in different lineups, like they call it paddle battling, where people will paddle like aggressively or like have a tactic or how they want to move to get in position so that they get the wave and someone else doesn't. But I think at this point in my life, I actually like kind of tune out and I want to go surf like places where there's less people, even if the wave's like not as good. But if I can be by myself or just with my friends, that's like way more peaceful to me now, I would say.
I think when you mentioned that, I think you mentioned that once before about surfing being a selfish sport. And I was like, whoa, I never thought of that. Because you're one sick wave's coming, who's going to catch it? And I don't know how that works if like you're out there surfing with somebody, right? It's only like one person gets the good wave at a time. Mm-hmm. So you are competing constantly. And like that's fascinating to me because I as I've gotten older, I've just tried to reframe what selfish means. And like, is it a good thing? Or like you need to be selfish. You have to be selfish. You have to take care of yourself, to take care of the people around you. And, the word selfish is, gets a negative connotation, but like, it's just, and that's just another meditation thing where it's like, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, love yourself, love the people around you. So if you do selfish things and take care of this, then you can focus on everybody else is, I guess just my thinking on it.
That's true. You can't get too lost and like be so selfless that you have no self, right?
That hits.
And then just like the other side with like, you can't be so selfish that you have no other selves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Involved in your life, right?
Yeah. The balance of, cause we all have many selves. I think that's another thing as we talked about, again, this is the theme of this entire thing is thinking and talking about mental health. And one of the things that I think in our conversation this morning about like, these are just things that we all deal with. Like we all have many selves. There's Brian Johnson who I think he was like the CEO or founder of Braintree, which sold into Venmo. And now it is like Venmo and PayPal's like highest level product that they sell. He's like a billionaire, but he wrote a blog about, he's like, I have like a 7 p.m. self. I have like a late night snack self. I have like a morning productive self. Like he has all these different, like we all do. We have all these different selves that are combined into one that we just slap a name on with letters and like, it's all one thing. But like really we're a collection of many different, when I'm with you, I'm different than when I'm just with Max. When I'm with Max, I'm different than, our friend Mitchell. Like it's going to be slightly different. But then we're a collection of all those different things. And I don't know, I just find it to be something that doesn't get talked about enough because like you can be, I don't want to say different people, but there's different parts of all of you. Like you're not, the best way to describe it honestly is like thinking about when you're a kid, when you're around your parents and then you go into like 5th grade, you get to fuck around with your friends. It's like, you're going to be different. And I think we lose that a little bit as we get older because we just kind of, get lost in what everybody else wants us to be. So
it's a good point. It's a great point.
But the next thing on surfing, because obviously I invited you here for a reason, not only that I think you're an incredible human being, but I guess for a little bit of background about why I look up to you so much as a human being. When we met working from home on a Zoom call, you slid into the role that I was working and you were literally 10 times better, 10 times like literally so good. And I was like, I thought I was good. Like, what is this kid doing? Like this kid's incredible. And so I just pinged you. I was like, dude, I gotta rub off. Like where's the magic? What are you doing? What's working? I'm going to steal it, like pretty much. And then when we chatted, I was instantly, and I know you've heard this from other people that you worked with. I was instantly like, dude, this kid's energy is just absolutely incredible. Like so chill, so like just you made me feel better about myself. Even if we were just having not a deep conversation, it was just like the vibes were high and it was a good day. It was a great day to be alive. It's like how you made me feel about life, which was amazing. So the second part of that is that when, I'm somebody who likes to talk about mental health, likes to talk about, again, like trauma, healing, addiction, the brain, all these different things. So I opened up to you fairly quickly, and you were very receptive of, all the, things that go on in my head. And then you shared with me what you've dealt with in life. And I was unfortunately not surprised that you had dealt with hell, because I think it gives you perspective on life. So could you just tell me and everybody listening a little bit about what it is that you've dealt with in your life, and then the way that you've kind of started to think about it?
First and foremost, thank you for that. That means a lot. And I will say, I feel like historically it's been very hard for me to accept compliments, because I'm like, I don't want to make myself feel overly satisfied and then just be have a sense of being done, I guess, if that makes sense. So thank you very much for that. That's it means a lot to have you say that. And then as well as not to quote the movie Scarface, the eyes, Chico, they never lie. I remember distinctively, I think it's our second call. It was either, I can't recall who had said it first, but somebody had made a comment about I can just see your eyes. I know that you've had a story. And I think you might've said that to me actually. Now as I think this back, I'm this guy's a wizard. How is he reading me this deep right now? And I do agree, before I dive in fully, that hardship creates perspective, or just adversity in general. It could be physical, we were just talking about. Even coming back into the sense of how I mentioned a really, really hard workout. When you're done, what's your perspective? You're oh, I feel so great. It's over. Everything is so good. That meal you have is just 10x better. Yeah. So I think that's a good foundation to kind of look at it through. But as it pertains to myself personally, I think more simply as a higher level, I grew up, obviously was born. One day I was born. And then I grew up in a small little house with my mom, my dad, and my brother Shane, kind of actually in the same town I live now. So I actually kind of came back full circle, which is really cool. But we ended up leaving there when I was really young, and we moved to a town further up down the road. Actually, I guess I should say up the road now if I'm going up north. So we would move there, and I was about 6 at the time. And obviously, when you're 6, you don't really have an understanding of reality or anything that's going on. But I always remember having to be driven around places because my parents weren't going to leave some 6-year-old kid at home by himself, yeah. A little young maybe. So I was always aware of the world, aware of what things that were going on. And I know that even for example, my mom would drop me off so my dad could off of work, take me home. So there wouldn't even be an hour of no time there. So I was always out and about. I was never just alone by myself early on for the most part. And even just hang out with my brother a lot too. When he was done with school or whatever was going on, from what I can remember, we would hang out a lot. And then from really what I can piece together, I just remember having to go to the hospital one day. I just knew something was wrong with my brother. And I do have some, mostly it's stored in episodic memory, the more gruesome, gnarly visuals. Mm-hmm. But I remember it was a week-long process, and it was right around Thanksgiving time. I guess long story short, come to find out later, my brother OD'd on heroin. And growing up, I was always told oh, he choked on his own vomit, which very well might have been the situation. But being that age, my parents kind of hid some truth of it to me. But I do have memories of my brother. I saw him one time in the hospital bed, and I remember being out in the hallway and seeing my mom go in and just hearing the noises that she made. It was I'll never forget that. It's very, very strong. And it's because when you're that young, you don't really bring a lot of memories with you to adulthood. Yeah. So it's very interesting now to look back and see what are the memories that I do have. And I know he actually died on Thanksgiving. Wow. So Thanksgiving for my family has always been we don't want to do this holiday. Mm-hmm. Even for my mom now, the last few Thanksgivings we've had, we just maybe just cooked a meal for the two of us. Yeah. And just kind of chilled and done our own thing and not really go too crazy. But yeah, I guess summarizing the loop on Shane, that was insane, right? Because it was I'm 6 years old and I'm trying to interface and understand reality, and grow up. And now there's this huge variable that not only affected myself and my parents and other people emotionally a lot, but like kind of shifted, I guess, like the next however many years of my life. Like I wouldn't be here sitting in front of you today, like if that didn't happen to Shane.
Yeah.
Like that very well could have been, we may not have ever worked together.
Yeah. We almost definitely wouldn't have. Just thinking about the butterfly effect of like
how things go.
You could have gone to a different college. You could have gone to a different, like had different interests and totally different things.
Yeah. The other, I guess, key components of the story, if it's like more so helpful for the audience to have context, like just some key moments I really remember. I remember standing in the kitchen of my mom's house, like my child, like the home that we had moved to. And I could see my dad was out in the backyard. And then my mom was right here to my right. And I remember telling them, like, as that young kid, like freshly after Shane had died, like obviously like hearing them cry, like hearing all this stuff all the time. That's all I was interfacing with.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, at least you still have me. And like remembering the clarity and the groundingness that I had, like this 6-year-old kid could tell these grown adults something that like actually centered them.
Yeah. And it did. I was going to say, I wanted to ask, it did. Do you think that it was helpful for them? Have you ever had a conversation with them about either saying that or those times? Because I can imagine, I mean, just my perspective and fascination with everything. This is what you go through at such a young age, and you're able to get through it at some level. You know what I mean? Like you're such a well put together person. And, I say kid because I think we're all still kids and shit, but like to deal with that, to have to be, like you're saying, be around that energy of your parents where they just lost their child.
Yeah.
Like what the fuck? Like nobody ever in a million years deserves that. And then they have another child that they're still have to take care of. Like my heart like goes out to them and just everybody. And again, this is my whole thing. Like we're all going through something. You just have no idea what everybody, is dealing with. And, for them to be able to get through that, for you to be able to get through that, no matter how you get through it, like, and maybe you never fully get through it. But would you say that you felt like maybe you were an outlet for them, to be able to distract? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, again, the same thing, like at least you still have me.
That's a really good question. And actually, as you say that, I think, you're right. It almost might have been like an outlet looking back, because I always remember my dad was still so overly engaged with me, like as it pertained to athletics, like playing t-ball as a young kid, like trying out football. I hated football. When we went to family swim together, we're doing swimming. So it was like, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, right? Because I don't have kids. Like, I don't know what it's like to lose a kid, like I said, nor have one. So from their perspective, like, I really have no idea what it was like. But I know, like, I guess, like, point blank, like, I know what my mom said to me. She's like, if you weren't here, I'd be dead. Like, there'd be no point in me living anymore, because I would have lost my only child. So, like, that's really, like, and even hearing that as a young age, like, I think that, and I'm not trying to assign like any blame or anything to her, but I think just me as a person, like I assign a lot of pressure to myself naturally. And like, I'm very like about my, like, I call it my tribe, or like, if you're part of like my group of people, like I will do anything for you. Like I will love you. Yeah. I want to support you through whatever it is that you want to do or what you're going through. So like combining those two things, I think it's like interesting looking back on it, as I felt this pressure of like having to be not two people at once, but like, it just felt like I had to be something all the time.
The glue. I mean, keeping it together. And that's my whole thing, is like at 6 years old, like that's like, again, so, part of the thing with, traumatic events, especially within childhood, is like, you grew up like that. You faced death and got it way too quickly. Like, you had to go through something that, nobody deserves to go through, but you started thinking about the world way differently than I always say, like, you're supposed to be learning your colors, and you're like, that's what you're thinking about. You're saying that to your parents. It's like, whoa, you really start to, you again, like that, hearing your mom's scream, like all those things, like as you're downloading all of this information, as you're trying to figure out the world as a 6-year-old, that's the information that's coming into you. It changes you. And again, that's why I think that you have the beautiful perspective on life that you do, and appreciation just blasting off of you at all times. But yeah, I mean, for their, I mean, dude, I can't even like to even think of a question. It doesn't make sense to me right now because the feelings that you felt, yeah, I mean, I personally can't imagine. And I, in this moment, am struggling. So I can't imagine how much you and, everybody struggled to go through that. But, I guess to turn it, more on a positive note, like what is, if I ask you, what is one thing that your brother's still here and he's still with you in your soul and your body and everything. Like he's like, that's what I believe. What's one thing that like you, if I ask you to introspect and look at yourself and be like, I got that from Shane.
Oh, South Park, 100%. Are you kidding me? I remember growing up and watching South Park with him. Like obviously I was like way too young to be watching that show like at that age, but I think like my mom would come in and be like, oh, just turn the volume down, and like sure enough my mom would maybe just turn the volume up or something.
Yeah.
But I guess to answer the question like more seriously, and it's hard to recall, right? Because like I can't remember like all of our memories, and that's like another aspect we can dive down to, is just like wanting to like experience or feel that again, and or like just so I can remember it right fully. Yeah. But I would say a love of history. For so whatever reason, like my brother wasn't, from what my mom told me, like wasn't like the most smartest kid in the school, but when it came to history, all about history. And like I kind of got like a history minor, I think like partially just because of like Shane in a way.
Yeah.
And I also love it too, just like learn from like our mistakes in general, just always trying to improve and like iterate. And I think history is a great like track to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Really interesting. Another, through trauma, and through, kind of what happens again when we talk about the brain and seeing shit or having all these like different or like crazy experiences, it takes you away from that present moment because you're thinking about the past or you're thinking about the future. And that's the world of, whether it's, again, PTSD, different forms of, and it doesn't even need a word or a diagnosis or anything like that, but just constantly thinking, like being forward thinking. And that's something that I, through working together and observing how you worked, I was like, dude, this kid sees the future. He knows exactly how to put the pieces together. Like you're clearly thinking, while you are in the present moment, a lot of the times you still have that kind of sixth sense and ability to think about the future, what's going to work, what's not, different things like that. And it's fascinating because like, I mean, again, I don't know this stuff. Like I only know this stuff through experience, but you've actually studied also through, college, like a lot of, what this kind of stuff does. And was that a reason for picking and I forget the major again, but cognitive
science. It's like a blanket term. It kind of can mean a lot of different things for like other kids.
Yeah.
Just like a psych neuro degree with like a lot of flexibility to like choose classes like other departments. But to be honest, like as it pertained to like picking a degree, we can move on from this rather quick because it's not that exciting, but like, it's like, I just couldn't decide. And like, I think I ultimately arrived at that because I had an interest in the brain, thoughts, like how we think. I think largely because not so much with my brother, but like with my dad growing up and like seeing how he like developed change, the things that he started doing, getting involved in, it kind of led me down this route of just being really curious about, I don't even know if saying human spirit or consciousness is right, but just maybe trying to figure out like, trying to combine like almost like the soul with biology. It was kind of it, I think, really for me.
Interesting. When you were saying that, I almost think about it as in why. Just like, why? Like, why did this happen? Why did, again, you said with your dad, why did your dad react the way that he reacted? Why? We're all just looking for an explanation to why. And especially in that field, because you're constantly looking at like, all right, like how does the world work? How does the body work? How does the brain work? And they're all, we talked about it the other day saying like, all right, mind and body, has been viewed as different things, but really they are the same. And I can only speak to it at that level because, there are a million different like technical terms and reasons why, but I definitely, they're a little too confusing for me.
It's all good, man.
But if you feel comfortable, and I haven't asked you, any questions about this in our personal conversations, but I would love to, hear, especially like with everything with your dad. Again, as we mentioned, can't imagine losing a child and what happened with the after effects of dealing with that grief for your parents.
Yeah, totally. I'm trying to think, probably obviously shortly after, try to remember things like shortly after my brother had died, obviously, because I was really young. It was a long time ago. But there was like an inflection point where like something changed. I don't know what happened exactly with my dad, but essentially became over the years, and I didn't know this until like later on, obviously, just my parents trying to protect me a bit. Like my dad like became like a huge opiate addict, which was super ironic because like heroin is an opiate, and it's like you lost your son to opiates. Now here you are addicted to prescription opiates, and you can go get them from whatever doc, really. Like you just go to the psychiatrist, he was saying, just handed him like he was candy. Yeah. It was like, why would you? And for him too, like his like mental fortitude and strength, like obviously having gone through that and like other things in his life, like he didn't have a dad growing up as well, probably like, affected him a lot. He's like, how am I? And I've only been able to have this thought as I've gotten older is like, because I had a dad for an overwhelming majority of my childhood, but for him, he never had one. And now here he is being one. His first kid, gone. Like I can't imagine, like how is he trying to interface with me? Like how is he interfacing with his life? Yeah. And so like I obviously just being the young kid that I was, like we had a lot of, I guess like headbutt moments. Like he became like super emotionally like abusive at points. Like I remember being on the phone with him and he just like kind of had called me just to like shit on me. I'm sorry if that's a bad word, but no, just like crap on me. But like, and I remember being like, I wasn't even in high school yet. I think I was in 8th grade or like in my freshman year of high school. Yeah. And I'm in the kitchen in basically the same spot that I had told him, at least, well, you still have me. And now here he is like shitting on me for my existence. Yeah. And it's like, it's just so crazy how like things could go full circle like that. But he was in and out of like multiple different facilities. And
at that point, you as a child did you know that he was struggling with something, or you just thought like, I guess so freshman year of high school, did you know that like, all right, something's up, or like, at what point did you find out? And again, at what point did you find out about, the truth about your brother? At what point did you find out the truth about, what your dad was dealing with as well?
Oh, okay. Well, the truth about my brother I found much earlier. I think it was around like 9 or 10, I would assume, if I had to take a guess. But with my dad, I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know like what specifically. I just knew that things were different because it had gotten to a point where like my parents slept in different rooms, and that was just really weird, like awkward to be like, what's going on here? So like thinking about how does that affect like your interpretation of like romantic love, like all these different things, right? You can go down the rabbit hole forever. Yeah. But yeah, I think I knew like things were pretty serious like right away. I think because like one time he had gone to a facility, like something had happened between like the communications with like him and my mom or like other family or something. And it was like the best decision for him to just go. Yeah. And like by this point, like the way he had like treated me, like all these other things, we had one physical altercation. Like it wasn't anything bad. Like, I just took like one swing at him and he like tried to react after he's like standing over me, trying to be like dominate me basically. And I guess even too, like not to backtrack too much, but my dad was like always kind of jacked up. There was another incident I remember back when my brother was alive. I remember like my dad came home and it was like full on like domestic violence, like threw keys at her, like cut her back open. And like I had these, they call them like they were like soccer bocker things. They were like giant, like cylindrical puff things that you put on your hands. And I put them on, I just went and swung at him. So I think even from then, like I always had like this resentment towards him. Yeah. And I think like all these other things like extrapolated all that. But yeah, he had left that one time, ended up coming back over a whole other plethora of things, ended up leaving again. But yeah, I don't really know where he's at right now. I think he's in Utah or something doing his thing, whatever that might be. Hopefully not popping pills.
Yeah. So I didn't even know that. I didn't know that. I know, you mentioned a lot of like Thanksgiving with your mom and at your mom's house and stuff like that. I didn't know, that you were not, actively in communication, with your dad as of now.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm blocked actually. Yeah. I had which is really even more full circle to get more ironic is my dad was actually a really, really good surfer too. And I only got into surfing because of my dad. Mm-hmm. So like even my relationship with surfing, like a lot of time growing up, it was like I was nervous or anxious to do it because like it stemmed from him, you know, like I can't even remember my first wave because he picked me up and like put me on the board with him.
Yeah.
And like I still have it. It's like in my mom's garage. He had like a 2-page color spread in Surfer magazine.
Wow.
Of like him in like in the 80s, like fluorescent yellow wetsuits, like shiny, colorful, that stuff that doesn't happen anymore. Like nobody like wears that kind of style.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see, and I could see his face, like, and you can see it so clearly in the shot. It's like, it's ironic for me. I ended up getting, it wasn't in a real magazine, but I got on the same Surfer magazine, like a website article.
No way.
And I remember I wanted to send it to him and being like, look at, like, I did it too kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like, I had a couple other videos and things I wanted to send him just to show him like how good I had gotten. And like, they would never deliver. So I don't think
yeah.
But my mom like could send him text fine. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you, you know, if, again, we can take any of this out that you don't want to be in.
No, I like that surfing component too.
Yeah.
The irony of, there's something so beautiful about the irony of like the fact, I will say though, I am a little pissed off that like his is in paper. Like there's nothing more cool than like being in print.
Yeah.
And like that magazine actually doesn't exist anymore. Like they're all under, like it's hard to be a real magazine like in the surf industry. And there's like one left that's like mainstream and then a couple that are like kind of smaller outlets, but that'd be sick to kind of one up them there and get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you still love him?
What do you mean by love?
Good question. And again, if any of this isn't something that you want to talk about, but I'm just very interested in, and perhaps think that maybe it is, you know, I've always been helped by talking things out, but do you have love for him where you can step back from the child that you are that deserves a dad in your life and deserves to still have that relationship? And can you empathize to the point where you could still say like, yeah, I do love you?
I could definitely get back to the point where like I can stand back, like empathize with like all of his situations and like all those things. Like I totally get it. Like even I had said earlier, like I couldn't imagine what it would be like to not have a dad, become a dad, and then like lose your first kid. Like that aspect and like other aspects of like of his childhood, like some other things that happened to him. Like, yeah, like I am able to step back and like empathize with that position and do all that. I think, I don't know if I could say like I love you like to your face to him, but like as a human being, like yeah, I love him just like as I love like you and like anybody else, you know. Like I don't want, like for me, I guess if I could answer that, be like, I hope you're not abusing drugs still. I hope that you're like finding like something like that's giving you meaning in your life.
Yeah.
And like treating people around you like well.
Yeah. And that's love.
Yeah. That's a form of love. Like, and then yeah, I would be along those things of like maybe more of like trying to instill tools versus being like, I love you, Dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I mean, just you know, I say this honestly because from a personal perspective, the more that I've learned about myself, the more that I've dug in on things, the more I've thought about where I've come from. And I look at my dad and I, you know, again, as you said about butting heads, Dad and I have butted heads and been best friends at the same time, you know, in different points of our life. But I never got to meet my grandpa Tony, my dad's dad. And something I think about is, you know, he had a dad that he had all of these feelings and a full-on relationship with. And how am I getting affected by either his struggles with his dad, his, you know, grief from losing his dad, his thoughts about his dad. And, you know, if he hasn't dealt with those things or processed them, and not in a way that, you know, I need to, like, he doesn't need to do it the same way that I do, but like, I just never really got to hear, like, I don't know much about my grandfather, you know, in the same way you probably, you know, don't know much about yours. Like but it's very interesting. Cause then you kind of, again, this is me trying to like figure out why, like putting the pieces together, the puzzle, and like one thing might make a little bit more sense. And like, even that tidbit about his father, to me, from the outside perspective, I'm like, oh, damn, this guy, like, you know what I mean? Like, he went through it, you know? And that's without knowing him, you know, personally or anything like that. Cause, you know, good people do bad things, bad people do good things. And, yeah, bro, we're all just so
random number generator.
Yeah.
It's all random.
Yeah. It does. That's a nice way to look at life. But, moving on in the timeline a little bit. Cause again, I'm fascinated, like how you dealt with this, how this, not only this, but like just in general, more in general, honestly, is like being in high school. Like I think high school is such a fascinatingly difficult time in everybody's life, no matter what happens. And no matter like what, on the outside, it could look all great. And like in the inside, you could be struggling it could be the opposite. Like, how did you deal with it, going through high school? What was your MO? What was your crew? What was your first time you kissed a girl? Like what's going on? Who's Tyler in high school?
I think I had mentioned this like kind of briefly before, but like my dad would have been in and out a couple of times in high school. So that was like a variable that was like very interesting to like deal with. It's like starting high school, he's in the picture, not in the picture, adapting to life without him, and then having to readapt when he kind of comes back in, and then readapt again when he leaves again. So just like everything in life, right? It's like up and down, like a sine wave or any kind of wave. Mm-hmm. High school was very much so like that, I would say. But also too, like you had kind of alluded to, amazing time of self-discovery. Like the difference from like, not just like, oh, I'm a freshman versus like I'm a senior, but like actually like biologically, like maturity, like all those things. It's just an insane time to develop and grow up. But high school was rad. Like my mom was very like, so my mom went to like a high school in like what was a much rougher part of the county back then. Like we always grew up like in like a, like very like culturally dynamic like environment. It was awesome. Like I loved my hometown, like my neighborhood, like all the people I like spent time with at a young age. But like, so like she kind of approached, given that she had gone to like a high school that wasn't like the best high school at the time, like the best area, like gang stuff, like all this stuff going on. It's obviously like affected her in her vision. So she like made it her mission, and like God bless her, but she like took it upon herself. She like worked 2 jobs to send me to private school. She's like, I don't want my son to like have to go to that high school. And I don't know, maybe she had like the clairvoyance. I got to ask her this actually now that we talk about it. Like, were you thinking about like everything that we had gone through up to that point? Like Oceanside High School might have just been not the call at the time. So she worked really hard to send me like to a private high school. But even then I think I felt like some detachment like during that time, because I couldn't, like I had my group of friends and a lot of stuff, but just like a lot of things like kids were like involved in or doing, I just couldn't relate to.
And wait, why?
It was like more of like a financial thing of like, oh, we're doing like this vacation, like this party, like this trip, and just things I'm like, what you could do that? Like, no way. Like, that's crazy. That sounds fun. So along that time, like, not saying like, dude, who gives a crap about money? Money doesn't matter really. But like, it was interesting to like kind of like have all those worlds meet for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you could say at this age, it's a nice perspective to have. And I know we talked about last night at dinner, different perspectives on money, how you grow up with money, and like, it doesn't matter. But at that time, it's like, did you think money didn't matter, or you thought like, oh shit, everybody's doing all this sick stuff, or everybody's doing,
Oh no, the pressure was there on me always. Like even from a young age, I remember telling my pediatrician, like I wanted to like have like money and be rich, like whatever that meant. But I think it always like came back, even still to this point, like even any desire that I have with money, it only comes back to 2 things. Like freedom for me to do what I want with my time. Like I couldn't give a flying crap about any car, like whatever, it doesn't matter. Like to me, I just want to do what I want to do. And I want to like take care of like my mom and my family. Yeah. And like, especially that second point of like assigning that pressure, like really weighed a lot on me, like growing up from like that young age. So like high school was always like thinking about like just different ways to kind of get down that avenue. Like I remember even taking like an app development class in high school because it was only like a semester long. I didn't really learn anything too crazy, but just like trying to explore those avenues of like, well, I know like people are making money on the apps in the app store. Like I'm a sophomore in high school. Like I should take this class, try and figure that out, sort of thing. But yeah, it's interesting that I think a lot of people, and I'm not saying this to like make myself sound better, but like a lot of people kind of interface with money for like their own like needs and stuff. Mm-hmm. But like, it is almost like I took money as like for everybody else around me too at the same time. And at such a young age, it was like I was a father, like trying to provide for my family. I'm like not even out of high school.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially, I mean, in high school when I don't want to say like stepping into that role, but your mom has been married, and then all of a sudden the man that, is that person for is gone. And then there's only one other man in the house. And like, that's another thing that like, I have no understanding of like how, like what that's like, but like so many people have to deal with that of like being, again, even if your parents are just divorced, it's like when you're with your mom, you know, if she's not dating or if she's not, you know, remarried or anything like that, like it's just you know, and they might subconsciously look for things for, like, even if it's just like emotional support, things like that, where it's like, they might not like there's probably things, the conversations that you had that like she would have been having with her husband that like, and again, maybe that's something where it's like growing up too fast. You know, but that's something that so many people deal with.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people do. I think the only thing would just be like, that comes to mind is like venting about work or other stuff. You know, like, honey, I had a hard day at work. I think she just kind of subconsciously like, and even still to this day, it's kind of funny. She'll call me like, oh, that's how my work day was. I was dealing with X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
You know, I always let her just try and like, I want to give her the space, just let it out.
Yeah.
You know,
that's awesome. Well, tell me more about your mom, because we haven't talked too much about her in our conversations, but when you speak about her, your eyes light up, and I can feel and tell how much love you have for her, respect, and also, I don't know if there's, I'm looking for the right word, but care. Like really care, like you, again, like when we're talking, you know, about money, you talk about wanting to take care of your mom. I'm like, for me personally, that's not something that ever like comes through my head, because like I don't know, it was just never like that with my mom. Like, but you know, I guess I didn't have to, you know, deal with that or have those conversations. But like, what is, you know, just tell me about what your mom means to you, and also what something is that you've gotten from her.
like obviously she like means the world to me, because I would not be like alive without my mom, right? She brought me into this world, kept me alive and well nourished, and like I'm here today because of her, right? So thanks, Mom. You might want to edit this part, but what did you just ask me on the back end? What would I?
Well, just one thing that like, what is, I would say, what is one thing that when you look in yourself, you're like, that's my mom within me. Like that's my, you know, like that's been instilled with me. That's been instilled in me from like the personality of just seeing how she operates throughout the world. Like things like that.
I don't know why this one's coming to my mind right off the rip, but like almost like a cleaning mode. Like there's like this switch that goes off where like she'll start cleaning, and then like it's not done until like literally anything and everything is spotless and perfect. Like, oh, I got to clean the dishes. It turns into the whole house. Yeah. And like I witnessed that in myself, because I would just watch her just like a busy bee, just going all the time. Like, oh, that's my mom there again. And then I would think like maybe like verbally, I don't know if I can, this is a good one. This is a really good one, because I have it at the tip of my tongue. I feel like maybe like not her word choice, but like she can be very deep in like conversation too, I would say. Yeah. And I don't mean deep in like emotionally deep, but just like a lot of details. And I think I can maybe give a lot of details, maybe too much detail sometimes. Like, dude, get on with the point, man. Like, what are you trying to say? You know, sort of thing. I mean,
when we have conversations on FaceTime and stuff, it can get to that point where it's like, whoa, we're getting deep. Like,
yeah,
we're getting
like, slow down, take a step back, and just like summarize and finish your point.
Yeah, and we both do that. We both do that to each other too. So you like wrapped in.
We short fuse, and then we're like, what do we say now?
Yeah, I like the. I wonder what's happening when you're short fusing.
Like, oh yeah,
do you know?
I actually don't. I would assume, I could be wildly wrong here, but I would assume it's just like either too many action potentials are going the same kind of flow, or just all coming and meeting at one place. And it's like, hey man, we got to just stop for a sec. Yeah. Like it's a traffic jam, log jam. Yeah. I would call it like a chemical traffic jam. Yeah. Of all these things coming out. Cause that's another thing about, just the way that the brain works. And again, these are things that I don't know for sure, but, so many thoughts like that. My mom would also say that about, like stuttering. I think she had like a stutter at one point, and she always told me like there was like your brain's working too fast to get like for your mouth to get the information out. That happens to me a lot still. Yeah. Like I'll think something, and I don't recognize that I can think way faster than I can speak. Yeah. And it's like, those are two totally different like realms, man. Yeah. Like, you know? Operating on completely different levels. But all right, so we get through high school. Like it's amazing that anybody gets through high school, but fascinating. Yeah. But what was choosing college like? Because you know, I know you told me a little bit about your freshman year of college, why you went. But when did you decide to go to a certain school? Yeah, so like neither of my parents went to college, so like I couldn't really like ask them for like support or like advice. Like, how do you choose? Like, how do you pick classes? Like, how do I talk to my advisor? Like, what should I ask them? Like, I had no idea. Right. And like having such a heavy involvement in swimming, it was like very pushed down, like from early age. Like even as soon as we started, like you should stick with this sport because it's going to like fundamentally change like the direction of your life, which it did. But it got to the point where it was like, even from coaches and like now looking back, like it's obviously in their best interest to place as many kids at schools as they can because it makes their program look better. But it was almost like, I felt like if I didn't swim in college, like my life was going to be a mess. Like I'd be a failure. Like nothing would have ever happened for me, which looking back now is like so comedic and like hysterical to look at. But like that was like kind of how it was presented to me. Like, you got to do this, you got to do this. So I only ended up just picking one school that like, it was a small school in Eastern Pennsylvania, Lafayette College. I went to Lafayette for 1 year. If anyone knows what that school is, really small place. I don't even really know how they're Division I, to be honest with you. Well, they compete with like Army and Navy and
Patriot League, right?
Patriot League. Yeah, the Army Navy wins everything, and like Boston, they always win everything too. It's in swimming. So yeah, I did that for a year. That was a crazy wild ride of experience. I met like lifelong friends there. Totally different change of pace. Kind of really close to Philly, I guess. That's actually why the first time I came, as I had mentioned earlier, was just like a day trip.
Yeah.
The day before the Super Bowl. It was a year that Philly actually won. So I got to see the city before it all burned down. Yeah. Which was cool. But yeah, I ended up leaving that school as I had realized like kind of the things I just said, like swimming wasn't everything for me. Like I knew I wasn't going to be an Olympian. Like and I thought there's no pro swimming, you know what I mean? Like you're not going to make money or do anything off that. It was like, maybe I should like divert my attention to other things. Like I miss surfing all the time. Like that was seemingly like way more passionate about that. And swimming was just more something I did because like it got me places. I had my best friends, it was great exercise. And it felt great to compete like in a swim race. It just felt good to compete, but training was just, I couldn't do training anymore. I could have, it just wasn't my cup of tea and it wasn't going to serve me more in my life. So I ended up making that decision to leave, had a huge throat surgery as well. That was like a big catalyst. I had like my tonsils taken out. I had my adenoids taken out. I had abscesses that were growing behind my tonsils. I had staph in my throat. I had strep, like all at once. And I actually had to go to like the hospital a couple different times. It was crazy that because the last time it happened before the surgery, I was on a flight, like trying to come back. Yeah. Because I was visiting somebody and like things were happening, developing like as I'm in the air. And I'm like, I was just so determined to get back to the same hospital because they had my info from before. Yeah. That I just wanted to get there. And I had like my coach and like teammates calling me and I can't even talk anymore because my throat had like closed up so much. I'm just like, sort of thing. And they're like, don't get on, I had a connection. They're like, don't get on this plane. Like if anything happens in the air, like you're going to die. Like they can't fix your throat up there. And I was like, I'm fine. I'm just getting on this plane because I want to go to the same hospital. And like my coach stayed with me that night. Like picked me up from the airport, drove me back to the same hospital, had to wait forever in the ER. And it was like, I knew I wasn't gonna die. I think I was in a hospital, I'd be okay. But like I kind of played with it a little bit because it got to the point like the swelling was getting so bad that I couldn't breathe anymore. And like I remember where I was sitting in like the ER bed at this point, like my coach is there in the chair and there's like glass windows like across. And I just had like one tear roll down my left cheek. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I just can't keep putting this up. Like I literally can't breathe. Yeah. I'm thinking that. And like my coach sees me and he's like, I remember seeing his face. And then like at that glass window I had mentioned across, like there was like a nurse, she's like, and then they get somebody, they pull over and they're just pumping me with IVs and they bring all the swelling down and I could breathe again. But then I had surgery like the next morning, all that stuff. But it wasn't cool to like have that moment, but it's cool looking back on it being like, oh, like if you do get to that moment, like really like death's not that bad. Of like, if I had to go further, I had accepted it. I was like, I don't care. Yeah. It's fine.
And dude, I was going to say, I mean, I know we've talked about, all different mental health aspects, but at that point, were you in the state of depression?
Oh, my freshman year. Yeah. I think I definitely left because I was depressed like as well. I just wasn't happy with my life. Like, I think that I had, I've assumed that I would guess that myself knew there was something more in life and I was yearning for more, whether that was like purpose, like maybe not necessarily things to do, but I felt like I had like a different path I had to take and like there wasn't it. And I just was miserable. Yeah.
the timing of it is really interesting because again, with the brain and body being connected and things like that, it's just really interesting that, at that point, you almost found a way to kind of get close, like your body found a way for you to get close and see like how, and get that, again, like you're saying now, like, oh, that's not that bad if you get that close. And it's like, whoa, like that's a crazy thing. Like somebody called me the other day a drop dead human. Have you ever heard that term?
No, I haven't.
Where like if you drop dead right now, everything would be fine. And like I took it as a huge compliment. I was like, well, that's sick. And you're the same way. It's like, yeah, if you died right now, like you've done your job here. You know what I mean? You've loved the people around you. You've been an exceptional human being, and like it's all good.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, I guess you could look at it as like it's not your decision, right? Like God forbid, but like we could step out onto the road like for a walk later and like someone's driving like totally irresponsibly and like we get clipped. Like that's a terribly gruesome example, but you just never know, right? Like it's not in my control. Like I can do things that are in my control, like have a healthier lifestyle, take care of my body, but like just stuff can happen.
Yeah.
So like don't go around expecting like, oh, I'm going to make it to 85 and everything's going to be hunky dory. It's like, that's not guaranteed, man. Like you literally have like right now, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what, honestly, I haven't even processed in my own head, my own like suicidal thoughts. And I've mentioned this, before, and but going to be publicly putting out, a lot of what I was, thinking at that time out there, but I don't think I've ever processed of like, damn it was like really that close, So like, what is being that close? Like, what are the thoughts in the moment for you? And then what are the thoughts now looking back, maybe like one or two layers deeper
on that specific incident?
Yeah, that or just death in general. And then also, I know we've talked about, everything being hospitalized, for either different thought loops or different, just, I don't know what it's like, to be at that point.
I think with like the hospital example I was bringing up, it was very different. Like obviously a very different situation because like something physically was happening to me.
Yeah.
That was like out of my control. So it was like more of an acceptance of like XYZ might affect ABC and then I could die.
Yeah.
Right. Versus like, and like that's fundamentally different than like something unexpectedly happening, right? Like, so you won't even have the time to process because you're dead.
Yeah.
Right. Or then like, I guess like on the third avenue of things, like if you want to go down like that rabbit hole, I guess a good place to start. So I'd actually ended up leaving Lafayette at a certain point, like I had mentioned, doing my education at UCLA. And like at this point, like everything that had like stored up in my life, like I had gone to like therapists a couple times. Like I never stayed at one. And I remember even like one of them, like, because I referenced South Park, one of them had like a Kenny doll and it was like intentional. They were like, oh, what do you think when you see that? And it was like, oh, Shane, like looking at the doll.
Oh, wow.
So I had moments like, but I never stayed at one because I think I had known like at that moment, like they're doing some trickery and it maybe was like a trust thing with me.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, you guys are doing some weird like wizard stuff. I can't be around you.
Yeah. You're like fucking with me.
Yeah, exactly. Can't really recall where I was going with that. Oh yeah. Storing up everything in my life. And I will say like looking back with like my hindsight, I was crippled with the pressure I put on myself that I had to like immediately right then and there, like take care of my mom, tell her she can like stop working so hard because I would witness like how much of her life like she sacrificed. And it was almost like I was kind of living for her more so than like for myself, like didn't really know myself and was just like angry at the world, like hated my dad. Like I couldn't say the sentences I said about my dad. Like at that time, like I would have moments where like I would literally just like think about how bad I wanted to beat the shit out of him. And like it had culminated to a point where like I was just so depressed. Like I didn't even want to live anymore. Like I just didn't enjoy stuff. Like it sucked. And I could still go do things I love. Like I would go surfing, like, right. And it was just more so of like a numbing kind of thing. It wasn't even like, oh, that was fun. Like, or even like hang out with people. It was like, just like something that just happened. It wasn't even like anything that was there. Things kind of just became more soulless. Like there was no meaning. I would say it was like a gradual like transition for sure. But like over time, yeah, I just got to a point where I fully didn't want to like live anymore. I was done.
Yeah.
And going, I guess up to that point, like people I'd known, like people close to me knew like I was like obviously not doing the best, but like I would never be like say like all my full thoughts like explicitly, of course. But yeah, I got to a point where like I was not doing so hot one day. Essentially, I had gone to class and like I had let a couple people know. I was like, dude, like I'm really like jacked up today. Like I had not been that jacked up before. And like even when I was sitting in the class, like the guy was talking, and I mean, this happens a lot probably. If anybody listening, you've been in a class, they're talking, you have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah.
But this guy, like he was actually opening his mouth, and it wasn't even like there was like any like auditory noise coming out. It was just like silence, like this buzzing. And I remember like leaving that class, and like if anybody's played like I think it's called like first person, like a Tony Hawk or like a Grand Theft Auto, like any of those games where you're like the character, you can see the back of the character on the screen. Really, truly, I can't emphasize this enough. I had felt that I was watching myself from behind, like it was like one of those games, and I could literally see, like my eyes were open, but that's what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like I had control over myself anymore, and like I was just walking, and I remember like having thoughts of like, dude, like you should really kill yourself, like genuinely. I was like, what am I waiting for? I would just fucking do it. And I remember telling a couple of people that, and they're like, that had been like, yo, like this is enough.
Yeah.
And essentially like that somebody, I remember getting like a call from one of these particular people, and they were trying to ask me where I was. And I was like thinking about like kind of looping back to like the therapist doing like wizard stuff. I was like, I knew you had a different intentionality of like why you're asking me that. You're asking me where I'm at because people are going to come for me.
And you knew that.
And I knew that. And I didn't want to say anything. It was so strange. But sure enough, like this guy would not leave me alone until I was like, it was just to the point of like, dude, like back off.
And who was this? And this is just like somebody from a hospital or something?
I don't want to say I don't want to say who it was because I don't know if what the situation about it or with them, but it wasn't like any of my personal, like closest friends or anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I ended up like relinquishing that. And then, but at this point, like I had like opened a Topo Chico. I was like just trying to unwind, like just have some water, just lay back down in my bed. It was like an early morning. I was like, I'm done for the day, man. This just take the day. You really need the day today.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to do anything else the rest of the day. I was like, this is a big one. Sure enough, I get the knock on the door, and then I open the door and there's cops, and they're like, hey, are you Tyler? I'm like, yeah. And then like, why don't we have a chat? And I was like, oh boy. And then they were just like, yeah, hey, we're getting calls. Like people aren't worried about like your own safety today. Like we just have to do our protocol. Like how's everything going? And at this point, like I had like fully broken down because I was like, damn, like I really am that bad. Because I was almost like in denial of like, oh, I'm fine. Because like my whole life, whatever it was, like I'm fine. Like I'm gonna keep going. Like it doesn't matter, sort of thing. And it got to the point where I really didn't realize like I wasn't good. So like they ended up like, it's actually the only time I've ever been handcuffed, which is kind of a fun story. Cause they're like, oh, it's just procedure. Like, don't worry, you're not getting arrested. You just have to put these handcuffs on
can
you.
Can we like get a new procedure?
Yeah.
The last thing you should do.
Yeah. And they were like, yeah. So I'm getting like walked out of the dorms, like handcuffed, like just people watching. Like I just got like arrested for like a drug bust or something. Like there's cops, they have like guns strapped on their side. Like I'm like, okay, this is gnarly.
Jeez.
And they before they even walked me out, they're like, yeah, do you want to like put like a t-shirt or some shorts like over these cuffs so like nobody has to see? And I was like, it's fine. Like,
oh yeah, that's gonna look normal.
Yeah. Like, there's this shirt that's hanging behind my back. Like, okay. But they were super cool. And they were just like, hey, like, and I think at that moment I had actually like fully surrendered for the first time. And like I totally thought I was gonna be like out later that day. I was like, oh, everything's fine. I'm just getting like taken somewhere to just be like, how's everything going, Tyler? And then like I ended up, they popped me into the hospital, whatever. And then I'm talking to some people, and then I found out they're like, yeah, we're gonna keep you here for 3 days. I was like, what do you mean you're gonna keep me here for 3 days? And it was crazy because like I had no time to like tell anybody what was happening. I had no idea what was going on. Like, and it just sounded like I was getting locked away. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna take your phone away. We're gonna take all this stuff away. And it's like, what do you mean? Like how, no one's gonna know that I'm in here. And I was like freaking out about that. I didn't even care anymore about like that moment in and of itself was like, dude, how did I get this far gone that like I wanted to like not live anymore, that like I'm in this situation? Like, it was just more so like a pain and a nuisance of like these people then had like authoritative say over me. I was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I'm walking out of here. It's like, no, you're not.
You're still in like the third person view of yourself. You're just like, and were you like, again, were you like fine at that point on that day?
I would say maybe it depends how you define fine. But with other people around me, was fine. Yeah. But, and also the third person point of view thing, like to kind of close the loop there was one moment I remember just like, I was in a stairwell and I remember like stopping. I'm like, dude, what the heck just happened to me? And I got like scared and I was like, that's weird. And then that's when I had like reached out to people and been like, hey, like this is what happened today. Like here's what I'm doing. And then that's how everything occurred. Cause I was just so alarmed in myself of like, that's never happened. Like, am I hallucinating sort of thing?
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up staying there for like, it's supposed to be like 3 days. I ended up staying a fourth day because like the weekend rotation, which was like really like cataclysmic in the moment. It's like, oh, I'm only in here. I get out today. And they're like, no, you have to stay here another day. I was like, why? It's like, well, yeah, well, it was basically like, yeah, I'm sure you're doing really good, but like the doctor that's been seeing you is off today. So you got to wait to see him tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, fine. You're just going to rack up, you're like ripping the university off more money, but okay.
Yeah. That's unreal. To close on that topic, like what did you learn from being in there? And what did you learn? And I know we talked about, beforehand, whether we were going to include this topic or not. And this is something that is difficult and it sounds bizarre and it sounds crazy, but at the end of the day, like you're just a human being who like, was in a really bad place and you had to go, get the help that you needed. And like, when you say it like that, it's not a big deal. But like when you say like mental hospital or asylum, it's like
freak out.
Yeah. It makes it sound like you're a fucking creature. It's like, no, you're just a dude.
Yeah. And I think you summarize it perfectly too. Like I actually have some people's like phone numbers still, like I stay there with, but like all people across the spectrum, like were there. Like there were other UCLA students there. There were 2 other UCLA students that were there. And like one of them had like a very similar like major as I did. And like, I remember seeing them like far off on campus, like months and months later. We weren't like in a close vicinity. Like I go up, they were like with a group of people, all this stuff. But I remember seeing them and they were smiling and being like, they got whatever they were dealing with, like they figured it out.
Damn.
So that was like a cool moment. I saw the other person, like as part of like when they had you like kind of leave that whole thing, they were like, oh yeah, we're going to put you with like a therapist to come talk to. I remember ended up seeing like another girl like in the waiting room one time. We're like, oh, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's up? And, just like connecting on that moment, like those connections I had and have with those people, it's like so different because we were like in this place, but they're all normal people. Like there's even somebody that was, they were like an EMT, like for an ambulance. Like they take care of emergency situations all the time. Like they're here in this emergency situation. I never pry on like what got people there. Like nobody would ever ask, but it was like, oh, we're all here because we know we had a boo-boo, like what did we do? Yeah. And it was really cool, like connecting with all those people, but definitely wouldn't like recommend going back, obviously.
Yeah. Getting to a place.
Yeah.
Not a place you want to.
And I guess like on that note too, like it's important to mention, like, I guess like through my perspective now, like it's easy for me to look back and be like, yeah, this all happened. Like I learned a lot from it, blah, blah, blah. But like, I think more so for like the audience, like anybody listening, it's like I wanted to emphasize this actually. So I'm glad I kind of got back here is like, there will be signs along the way. Like God forbid, like you're ever in a situation like that, or like you just don't want to like your existence, or you're questioning it, or like anything's going on in your life, whatever it is. Like obviously like talk to somebody you love. And if you don't have anybody ready available, like there's like resources online, like don't hesitate. But like you're going to know like long before that, like there's going to be things that should warn you. Like I had mentioned, things that I had loved, like weren't as engaging to me, or there was even like, this happened like, right before like a week or so, I had ended up having this whole thing go down, but I had gone and worked out, with a friend, and we had gotten lunch after, and then we had finished eating. Immediately I was like, I'm going back down there to like work out. Yeah. And he was like, looked at me like, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you do that? Like, you're a freak. And it was literally just because I was trying to numb whatever pain I was having. And I remember working out so hard that I just was struggling to get back to my dorm. I had to sit down and like call one of my friends. And I was like, I'm in so much pain. And like, really, I guess I was just like looking for pain to like kind of numb whatever that was. Like that was a sign. So that's 2 signs there. I would say like a third sign was just like, even like the intent, like like when you look in the mirror, like you can't lie to yourself. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really hard to like have the awareness in those moments. But I would say like on this subject, because really this is all for the audience, right? This is all for everybody. Like, I'm good now. I don't want anybody to worry about me. I'm straight. I love my life. I love everybody around me. Everything is rad. But like, please, like, if you can, like, if you ever have anything, remember what I'm saying right here. You're going to have a moment where you'll know there's going to be something that happens, you know, that you need help. Like, don't think of it as like an issue or a problem. Be like, yeah, I just need to do this because this is going to get way worse later on if I don't deal with it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. And like, don't judge yourself. Like, don't be mean to yourself and be like, oh, like, I'm effed up. Like, I have these problems. Like, don't play a victim mentality. Like, ever. Like, even, you know, you have hard stuff going on. Like, don't beat on yourself. Like, don't beat yourself up. Like, don't tell yourself you're, you know, like, oh, this is this way because blah, blah, blah. Like, you always have something in your control. You always have something in your power that you can interface with, work on. Like, there's always something, right? Like, you gotta have like that fighter mentality. Like I was talking about, like those soccer bocker things. I'd go punch out my dad. It's like, it has to be like that. You have to view your life as like, it's me, but no one else is going to love me or do anything for me more than me.
Yeah.
So like, remember that for yourself, and like, you're worth it, and people love you. And if you don't think anybody does, I do. So yeah.
I love that, dude. And yeah, that's the energy that you put off. And that's the energy that I try to, you know, not only put off myself, but surround myself with too. And a big part of the reason why is because when you're going through those thoughts, it helps to hear what you just said.
Yeah.
It helps to recognize that, oh, wait, it's like not the worst thing in the world. Everything's okay. You know, like, yeah, well, I'm just like, something hurts right now. And I am constantly comparing the brain to the body, as in, okay, yeah, like broken arm, something's obviously wrong. Like, when it's in your head, it's not that easy to like identify. But like, you know, even like if you just fucking turn your ankle and you're down for a week, like sometimes you turn your ankle in your head and you're down for a week, and it's just something that's going on, and like, it's going to figure itself out and it'll heal and it'll be fine. But confusing as fuck when it's happening. It's like, oh, all of a sudden, like, damn, all of a sudden I hate the world like today or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, out of nowhere. And that's what kind of happens to people. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to give up hope, but hopefully this helps.
Yeah. And I guess like one more thought to throw in there is like, also through the game of like, for the audience listening, is like, your perception, obviously I never want you to have to like interface with like a situation like that, right? But if, God forbid, if you do find yourself in that situation and like you are in that environment and you do come out, you will never interface with time the same way ever again. I like truly, like, now it's like, oh wow, like my time here is really, really limited. Like, I was taking like all this for granted. I acted like I had forever to live, forever to do whatever. And you might even have the same feeling if you like have somebody close to you die, like, or like you hear about a celebrity that you really love, they're a musician, like they pass away. It's like, oh wow, like this is temporary. But like that takes it to like another level of like, wow. So I would just say, like, if there's anything that you really want to do in your life, or you just love, or something you want to say to somebody, you should just do it. Like, just go do it. And like, you're going to feel better after you do it.
Yeah.
I know this actually, I don't know if we can figure out how to tie this into the pod somehow, but if not, I can loop back. It's actually on the job. We had like a work conference one time. We had to go to Miami, and they just brought me as like the film dude. So like, I edited this whole video, and I got like free B-roll shots of like Miami. Like, I had this sick intro. I used After Effects, and I made like animations on our device. Yeah, I went nuts with it, and we never even used it. Yeah.
That's something you know how to use it too. After Effects is pretty hard for people to watch.
I had to watch a lot of videos. It's really tedious. There's so many buttons and shit. Like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Especially with After Effects.
All right, so we're good. I guess we're going.
Yeah, you're on with that. You're on with that.
Awesome. Well, we were. I mean, again, just we got to get Max a microphone, like a third microphone, or
Yeah.
for the post halftime breaks.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, dude. I like taking a little break. Throughout, obviously, it's a long conversation, but taking a little break and just being like,
Yeah, I feel refreshed.
yeah, I feel super refreshed. I'm
refreshed.
chilling, and like also the second part is just like wrapping things up. You know, getting things together. But well, where we left off was after college. And I love, and this is another thing that I don't know if it's going to be a theme or something like that, but I just love hearing about first, like the first time. And we talked about yesterday going for a walk. I went, you know, just saw parts of the city for the first time, and we both did together. Like, I thought that was so sick. So like, your first job after college, I find it to be such a wild experience. Like, nobody will ever forget their first job. And it's just like those memories are almost ingrained in you a little bit more. But tell me about your first job after college, because it's pretty fucking wild.
Yeah. So it was actually my job, like while I was still in college as well. Like it was, I guess I should say, like the major I chose, like I needed 2 quarters of internship or research to like graduate. That was a requirement. So like obviously having that above my head, I was like, okay, like how am I just going to graduate? And like around this time, like we're just now hearing like about this thing called COVID. And don't ask me why, but like I always had this weird like intuition that I was like, for some reason, like I'm not going to finish the school year here. And I remember like telling people that and they thought I was like psychotic, which I mean, obviously like in that moment, it's like, what are you talking about, dude? But I felt like that and I was like, I don't think we're going to be here. And so I felt like this like really strong initiative and push to like get something to get that done. Cause like pandemic or not, I was like, I just want to graduate at this point. Like I didn't want to like linger on longer. I was over it. Just wanted to be done, move on. I had actually gotten an internship at Surfline. They do like weather wave forecasting like around the globe. Like they do all the reporting on that. But of course it was unpaid. And I remember like the department, I was like really skeptical. I was like, I don't think the department is going to approve this.
And it's like surfing specific.
Yeah. And there's no way it would apply to like the major at all. It's like, oh, it's an internship. I got something like, okay. And it was denied. So obviously like I was pretty bummed. I was like, okay, I got to get something else so I can graduate. So the next day I just looked up like biotech companies in California. And there's like a very pre 2010s looking website, like bare bones HTML, like super basic. It's called biofarmguy.com. If he's out there listening, like, thank you so much. Cause you got me like on a good life path kind of indirectly, but he or she literally just listed out every single biopharmaceutical biotech company, that could possibly like fit under that description, like in California. And it was like, I think in other states too, they had everything there. And it was like the 4th or the 5th company I'd clicked on in the San Diego area. I had found that 2 of the advisors, I had gone to high school with both their sons and they were my grade. And I actually went to UCLA with one of them as well. So I hit up the kid I went to UCLA with. I was like, hey, like, look, I'm just trying to get an internship so I can graduate. Like, do you think you could like, maybe set an intro up to your dad? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, why not? I had no idea. It should be said, I had no idea what the company did. It was like before they got their FDA clearance, and like their website was like super basic. It just had like some cool like green animations on it. And I was like, dude, this sounds cool. Like it had the word neuro in the beginning. So it made me think of like neurology in the brain. I was like, okay, let's explore this a little bit more. Like the department's definitely going to approve that. Had like one conversation with the CEO, like heard his story, like dropped out of med school, kind of like interesting, like life events happening. And like those like drove his direction moving forward. Was in med school at UC San Diego. They had like pick different clinics for like a rotation sort of thing they were just doing. And they had 3 choices. And like his last choice was the pain clinic. And it's because pain patients, a lot of times they don't have solutions or modalities for them. And like, obviously if somebody's in a lot of pain, they're not going to be the most stoked and most happy person to deal with. So it can be kind of hard on that front. But he had befriended, somebody in that clinic. They were, a veteran, and they had a piece of shrapnel that was lodged into their knee from combat. And like they were the same age, and I'm trying to tell it with the same conviction that he had, because I could just see the emotion coming through him every time he would say it. But like here he was looking at this veteran, same age as him, had 2 kids, served our country, done all this stuff. And he's like, here I am in medical school, and like, I'm just complaining about being here.
Yeah.
Because I didn't choose this as my number one choice. So like they became really good friends. And eventually like this guy's pain got to the point where like he just took a shotgun to his leg. He just blew his leg off because he was supposed to come in for like another session or appointment, whatever was going on. And they were like, oh, why is he not here? And they're like, oh, well, he's in another wing of the hospital. And they go over there, and that's when they found out. And like, that was for him, like his, like, I guess like Genesis moment, like Genesis story of like, what am I going to do with my life? And like from there, like he got involved in research, ended up dropping out of medical school, created a medical device that can treat peripheral neuropathy. It sounds like it's been a long road. They've been going on it for over like 10 years, but it sounds like they're doing pretty good. Some things are turning around right now. And the medical device landscape is very gnarly, for sure. It's a lot of regulatory things, a lot of competition, big pharma trying to come in, put you out if they view you as like a threat to their sales. It's a messy landscape, like messy place, and crazy first job. But I'll pause there. Started out as an internship, and I'll let you drive the ship from here.
Yeah. So you're interning. What's your role? Like, what are you doing?
Like anything and everything. Like as an intern, I think my biggest project was like writing a user manual, like on how to complete therapy successfully.
Okay. This is such a funny thing again. Like so much going on for that company, and then you hire an intern to write the manual.
I know, it's kind of funny. Looking back, I mean, to be fair though, it was like very critical, right? Because like whenever you're dealing with nerves in your peripheral nervous system, they're like thinner than a strand of hair. So when you're trying to localize like a device, it's just like an oval shape. And the epicenter of that is where the treatment's delivered most effectively. So you're trying to align that across like XYZ coordinates. Like how is it here? How is it positioned? Like this plane, and like this plane. Like all that stuff mattered. And it was really, really important to get that dialed in, because if somebody's coming in to pay and they're expecting these results that we're telling them and we're off by like a couple millimeters, treatment doesn't work. So it was like a huge thing to kind of get that dialed in.
Yeah.
Right.
You gotta be right.
Yeah. You can't be wrong.
Yeah. So, and I know you mentioned the pain that these people were dealing with. Can you describe it the way, like how painful that is?
Yeah. I'm also too, like, I can't take as much credit for this. Like that CEO guy gave me like a lot of education, like a lot of these things, just like having me work like by his side, like doing a lot of this stuff. But there was a really cool figure he introduced me to called the McGill Pain Index. And I mean, it was just like a little arrow that's going upwards. You could look it up and find it out right now, Google Images, but just lists like different things and like their level of pain. You have childbirth, you have being lit on fire, like just crazy stuff.
Which ones, do you remember which one's worse out of the two?
I don't actually.
I wonder.
I for the ladies out there, I'm going to say it was childbirth. I think that one was higher. I actually think it was.
Damn, then being lit on fire.
Yeah, I think it might be because your nerve
It kind of like
endings
makes
go.
like, damn, that, oh.
Yeah.
It just sounds so painful. Both of them. I'm out on either.
Yeah, same.
I stubbed my toe and I'm like, bro,
I'm done. But the top of that scale was a CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome. It's like a very common diagnosis that doctors will give to like neuropathic pain patients. It's kind of like a loose blanket term, actually, from what I've come to understand as well. But that's at the very top, right? So you have these people that are like experiencing like this invisible pain due to like an electrochemical reason, or it could be like post-surgery, like a trauma, like an accident or something, or diabetes is another one that induces neuropathy. It starts in the feet in most people first. Chemotherapy-induced neuropathy is also real. Like people can go finish rounds of chemo. Like imagine that you get through cancer and now you're like, oh, I'm in the worst pain I've ever been in.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah. So like there's that figure, kind of all that, dealing with that. And these people didn't have like a solution. So opiate prescriptions, like a massive component for these people. So it was like really crazy for me to like come full circle of like, I mean, obviously heroin's a bit different than like just typical prescription opiates, but like my brother, then my dad, and now here I am working with these pain patients, like first as an intern, now as my first full-time job. And it just felt like right. It just felt like a great first gig. And whether I was treating the patients, like wearing it's funny, I'm actually wearing my medical scrub pants today, just because they're really comfy.
Yeah.
I still wear them all the time. But whether it's that, like handling our shipments of our devices to other clinics, going to the conferences, talking to the doctors. And I'd say probably the most pivotal part, I know we talked about it a bit, would be calling patients, like talking to patients on the phone, like trying to get them to try the therapy. And I can't say the word diagnose because I'm not an MD, but like just trying to decipher through some of their symptoms, like kind of get a little field of view if they would benefit from it or not. And just kind of like give them the opportunity to like open up. Because a lot of these people we found really quick, they never had the chance to like open up. Kind of like how we're having a deep conversation, like talking a lot today. Like a lot of these people just don't have that in their life.
Yeah.
And there were like a couple like grave instances where like I had to like talk people through like they wanted to kill themselves. Like in one particular out of those two, there was one that was like, I want to do it today. Like I'm thinking about it today. Like I want to do it right now. Like I can't do this anymore. So it was like very interesting for me to be like, okay, well, here's a trip down memory lane. Yeah, like I didn't laugh in the moment, but in my mind, it was kind of like that. Like, oh, wow, this is kind of ironic. Like here we are, yeah. But still obviously having like severe intentionality and like priority for like their health and like their well-being. But I remember pausing for a moment and being like, this is like really ironic that I'm here. And like having to get them through those conversations. And like, to my knowledge, like those patients like didn't follow through with that. action. I don't know anymore, but like I remember then, like, because I would be reaching out again, trying to get in touch with them and stuff. Or even like other instances too, where like I could talk to somebody, they would remember who I was, let's say like XYZ amount of conversations, and I could just call them back at another time where they might have been high on opiates and like, who is this? Like, fuck you, like, don't you call me ever again. I'm like, and they don't know who I am. And I'll call them again and they'll have no recollection of it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine his first job out of college, being young, like
Sub 15 person company, like super small, super gritty. Everybody just got in, just had to get stuff done. It was yeah, wild ride. I loved it. Yeah. Looking back.
Our friend that we were with yesterday was like, how much did you get paid for that? Because to deal with that like every day is, I mean, it's crazy, but also just the life, you know, the lessons that you learned, the perspective that you're able to, you know, that you've shared with me about it is, it's like, I mean, I laugh because there's no other way to like conceptualize it for me of like the chaos that like such a young kid that had, you know, not had to deal with, but did deal with. And then like, I'm just, you know, obviously fascinated by like what how that job had an imprint on your perception of people, yourself, like others, you know, down that whole rabbit hole. But that's probably a good transition into, yeah, like just talking a little bit more about how we met. So we worked for a company, we sold research. So we sold, just to get a little bit of background, we sold research to institutional investors, venture capitalists, startups, all different, you know, an array of different people. And it was kind of like a really intense environment. It was a very, again, young startup. We're all, you know, literally people would say like, we're going to make it. Like we're all going to be rich. Like we all thought that we were, you know, signing up to be, you know, part of the next big thing. And obviously for us, that kind of fell apart a little bit. But how did that intense work environment impact your day to day? And I know we talked about it in the beginning of like waking up in the morning, but I almost am more interested in it at like nighttime, because we were talking yesterday about like being like a workaholic or different things like that, like being always on at every single moment.
Yeah, I think also too, like I have like a natural tendency to like, I probably said this a lot of times in the pod already, but just like go, like 100% blast, like kill or be killed, like kind of mentality. A lot of times like be a lot too much. And I think like a lot of times, like I would have like worked X amount of hours already. I would have gotten my work done, but it's like, oh, there's this next thing. Like I can prepare for tomorrow. Like I can do this, blah, 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 blah. And like, you know, I think there's just like a healthy balance. Like it's a good learning lesson, right? Like just knowing like when to tune out and like recognizing, like obviously if you're incentivized to work more, like and go above and beyond, like absolutely do it, you know. But if you're just like kind of beating your head against the wall and like you're not like, you know, further advancing like yourself and like your career, then maybe take a step back and like rethink about, you know, how hard you might be blasting, or where you're maybe more important, where you're giving your energy and attention to.
Yeah. I guess for a little added context is that we are business development representatives, which our job essentially, the job that I, you know, started out with, was to reach out to people and schedule meetings for salespeople. So for that, like you can always do more. Mm-hmm. There's like, I mean, I would always laugh when I would log on LinkedIn in the morning. It's like, there's an infinite amount of people that I can reach out to. Like we're reaching out to people in Singapore, China, the UK, like there's people at every single hour that were awake and about to log onto their computer. And I'd always try to game the system and send emails when people were, you know, I like read a research report that people respond at the highest percentage rate if you email them in the last 10 minutes of an hour. Because if they have like a 9 a.m. meeting, if you hit them I would always do like 9:52. So like it's at the end of the meeting, something comes up. So it's not at the beginning of the meeting where they see it at the beginning and then
just announce it.
Yeah, at the end. So like it's kind of like catching them at that right time. So it's the last 10 minutes of an hour. And then also like very early mornings. So like people when they're just waking up, getting into their like morning routine and whatnot. Just the fact that they see it, again, as we talked about at the beginning of first thought of the day. If I get to them at their first thought of the day, again, like I was just talking about how I don't like this part of it, but again, I was using it. Being the first thought somebody had was like, oh, I got this email from this company about their research. That first thought of the day is going to linger with them throughout the day. is like at least how I feel about like the first thing that I think about in the morning, kind of stays with me throughout the day. And we would, but again, like we were just playing games, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like you're constantly playing games and it's an online world and it's so interesting and also confusing. But I think it's funny, if there's anybody that I think enjoyed it more than I did, like the game of that was you. And I was just like fascinated. But tell me a little bit about, the way that you like to work, the different things that you do, because you were more creative in that role than anybody I saw.
I mean, much like yourself too, like some things that like were successful were just like obviously like being conscientious of time zones, right?
Yeah.
Like calling like the Middle East, I remember in particular, was like really hard, just being in Pacific of like, okay, when's the best time I can call like someone in Dubai? Yeah. It's like a little difficult, but Asia was much easier for me. I just stay up later. Like we were talking about like staying the work hours. Like if it was Japan or like Hong Kong or somebody over there, I was like, perfect, like 5, 6, 7 p.m. Pacific, like it's on, sort of thing. So like that's something like I guess to touch on. But I think like as it pertained to like I think you had coined it as like the creative outlook or the approach. I think I really just tried to, this might sound a little woo-woo, but like I literally was trying to be intentful of this, is like that same energy that I was able to like garner and create at the medical device company with those patients, obviously knowing it's like now you're talking to like finance bros and like institutional people that like they're not thinking about like their mere existence today. They're thinking about making money. Trying to bring like that level of like care and just presence, like, hey, XYZ, like how are you actually doing right now? Like how are things going? Like you want to tell me a little bit more about what you're working on? And a lot of times like just the tone is everything. Yeah. You give people the chance to open up, they might tell you a little bit more. And then that gives you more to play with, right? And then at a certain point, they've told you so much, they're like, oh, I got to meet with them now because they're going to help me out with this stuff.
Yeah. It's just like finding the one thing to relate to. Because for me to tell the story about the one thing that I was cracking up. I was like, dude, you're so good at this. When you sent me or like screen shared with me about, you had the same sunglasses that a guy on LinkedIn had in his profile picture.
The blades, yeah. And like pit vipers.
And you put them on and you sent him a picture.
I did.
With them on. To find anything to relate. And that was just that was the moment I was like, dude, this kid's got it. Like he's thinking on so many higher levels than like normal. And I felt it like, cause again, that's unorthodox to do that. And you would create videos and different things like that.
Those are my favorite. Yeah. The videos were fun because you could.
Tell me about your favorite one.
Ooh, my favorite one. I think a couple highlights, like, we can say the company, like Shell gasoline, like actually showing up at a Shell gas station and filling up my car with gas.
Yo, shut up.
And like I would get creative too with like punchlines that I would use.
You got the meeting?
No, but she opened it a lot. Like she was the only person on like their team of what we were trying to sell at the time.
Yeah.
But their team's grown. Actually, it's funny. I'm trying to like reach out to them again. But yeah, like just doing something like that, or like with Apple as well. I remember like as an Apple computers and Apple iPhones, like literally walking to 7-Eleven and like doing a POV of me grabbing and buying an apple and like pretending to chip my tooth on that apple. It's just like a hook, like, oh, well, I'm in the video now. Like I'm going to keep watching. Yeah. Or if it might be like throwing animations on screen. Like that'll give some things away. I can't say what it was, but I used the Apple logo and put it in like a certain arrangement that it was evident I was trying to describe something just by using the Apple logo. Or actually, yeah, now that I think back about it, I think Tim Cook like opened those a few times. Like, I don't know if there was an assistant, but it was like, yeah, it says like Tim Cook's opening them on our software. I was like, okay, that's cool.
That's so cool.
He probably doesn't care. I literally thought about doing one because I read that he was like really into bicycling, like cycling. I thought about just crashing my bike into the ocean, like doing like different cut scenes and just being like, having my friend film it. It's like, I just don't care. Like at this point, like it's no shame. Like all I can do is try. And if you say no, you say no,
Yeah. And that's also that's what hits, is that this person is trying and this person is approaching this differently than anybody and everybody else does or has, is something that I think about, because it's like, again, Tim Cook, whether it's him or his assistant, how many emails are they getting a day?
A lot, yeah.
Like outreach. And
insane.
Like all of a sudden you get a video from this kid biting into an apple and going to a set. Like, it's just like unreal. Like, it's just like, dude, first off, I would be so like, what? But you got my attention. And that's what we're like, that's the game. You want people's attention.
Very true. Yeah. It's, the gamification. It's just like, yeah, you're trying to grab people's attention. And then obviously too, like, it's a little bit more than that too. Like we were like, you know, also involved in like trying to extract information as well.
Yeah.
You know, not to be like a detective, but we kind of were like, it's
a good way to put it.
You're the detective, but you're also the initiator.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you might not talk to me again, but while I'm here, I'm going to get a little bit out of you as well.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to talk with somebody else.
I think about it as like almost like a point guard.
That's a good, yeah.
You're not the sales. You're the point guard because you're setting the entire situation up for the salesperson to go dunk. You know what I mean? Like you're Kobe lobbing a Shaq. Like you're literally, but you got to do that work and put them in a position for success. Because I think it makes a massive difference. And then after getting promoted, working enough to sell myself, I realized how hard that was and how valuable that information was from a business development rep to be like, oh, like, because you could walk into a meeting and be like, I know everything because the person that hooked this meeting up just set me up to look so good. In the same way I was just saying about Max, like with the video, like making me look better than it actually is. It's like, well, your business development rep could make the salesperson look like they just studied for 3 hours, but really they just, briefed notes for 3 minutes.
Crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Who do we got here? Oh, okay. So not last, but getting towards the end of the topics, and this is like probably one of my favorite ones to talk about now. Is like, because it's a wild thing that a lot of people are going through right now. But getting laid off, like I mean, I say more I got fired, but I like it is what it is. But people can call it like getting laid off or whatever. But
unwanted. Yeah,
unwanted. Yeah, just period. Like,
unnecessary.
But like I guess I always like to just call it how it is, and it is what it is. But it can be a traumatic event for people. Like it can be a really, and I mean, it threw me into fight or flight mode. I was scared as fuck. I was crying. I was doing I was going a little crazy. Like it was nuts. Like it was a really wild time. And then when I called you, or when you called me after, the round of layoffs that happened that you were a part of, you had such you're like, yeah, I'm like pretty chilling. You're like, I'm like relieved and like that's it. And I was like, how, I don't know, how are you able to take that in stride so easily?
I think it's kind of touching on like what we talked about at the beginning of the pod, like how like adversity or hardship like might frame perspective. And like, this sounds really corny, but like I found that it like resonated with people at that job as like if I ever found somebody was like, I could tell like they were maybe down or stressed, like maybe having like an interesting day, like just try and spark it up, keep it a little bit lighthearted with them. But like, even just using the line to remind people like, hey, like, at least we aren't born in like North Korea, which like, it was like very comedic to a lot of people, but like people are like, oh man, I guess you're right. Like I do have a job today, or, things aren't that bad. Like I have a roof over my head. It's true. It's like, dude, things could always get way, way worse.
Yeah.
And I think that coupled with the sheer like killer be killed mentality, it's like you really like not in like an a-hole way, but like in your own, like to be your best advocate, you really have to go through life. Like if you really want something, like someone's gonna have to like kill you to take it away from you. That's just how I see it. And I also never really assigned like my identity to that company or that job. Like I knew that I was focused on other things long-term. I knew I had inclinations in my mind as well that like with some variables, like it might not last that long as well. So that's important to sprinkle in. But, I think like more largely just knowing like, I think it's a self-responsibility thing. And that kind of is coming full circle with like the mental health side that we just talked about too. It's like, let me backtrack. But for myself, like I don't put my health, safety, well-being, financial dependency solely on another entity, like a company. That's me. That's my issues. Those are my problems. I need to figure those out. Like, sure, a company can be a catalyst and help me for that. But at the end of the day, like that's not their problem. Yeah. It's my problem. So it kind of comes back to just like, cool. Like if XYZ company or person doesn't want you anymore, it's more so a question. It's not like, oh, like, whoa, now what now? It's more of like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
Like the attitude of it is everything. And if you're going to choose to be like sad and bummed about it, it's going to affect you more. But if you're like, okay, this might be an opportunity for something else. Sure. Like maybe money's tight here, or like I might be a little stressed in my runway, or like I might have to support for somebody right now, or like I got to cover this medical bill, but you just got to trust in yourself and like believe it's going to work. And like, if you be smart, like you can make things work.
Yeah.
It's just like when you start making bad decisions, like, or maybe not well thought out decisions, then you can kind of get in some more tough spots. But yeah, I would just say like always, like it's you versus you always. And it's like, you got to be your number one supporter at the same time. Like if you get fired, like not to be like crude, but you should be like, so what? Like, like the world's not going to stop for you because you got fired. Like time's going to keep going and you're going to keep getting older. Like it's your life and your time to make decisions. Like, which I think is honestly kind of freeing in a way, like, because you had said I used the word relieved. It's like, oh, it's like, okay, well, like I had a feeling this was going to happen. Like, just time to make those next steps and decisions now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a beautiful perspective. And what, the thing that has been like ringing in my head this whole time that you've been talking is the identity part of it. Because for me personally, I definitely got wrapped up in I'm a salesperson. I work in this industry. I'm selling to institutions and financial, this and that. And I'm like, I made it. Like I thought it made me cool. Like I thought because I was like crushing it in a way that I was cool, because and it gave me something to kind of like channel that in. And it really, I mean, it consumed a big parts of my life. Like not only, again, we were talking about working late at night, early in the morning, things like that, but even socially, like my conversations. And like now outside of like not working in that industry, I'm like, wait a second. Like I said, like when you got here, I was like, nobody gives a shit. Yeah. Nobody cares. And like, and we were joking about, there's literally like the industry that we worked in. I guess we can say the industry. It's like the crypto, digital assets,
blockchain space. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all, and like, there's literally like crypto Twitter. So like I said, when we were in the elevator, when you first got here, like, dude, there's no physical therapy Twitter. There's no, like bartending Twitter. There's no medical device Twitter, like, it's just like people would literally, it was a reality show. Like it was like, you were live, and like live streaming what they were doing. Like with work, it was a nuts industry to be in, and people are very public with all that they do, and like it really blurred the lines between like work and personal life for me personally. And I really look up to you because it felt like in our conversations, like I didn't get that vibe from you. You were still just kind of, again, like talking about random shit, surfing, like doing like how your day was going, what coffee, like whatever it was. You weren't as wrapped up in it as I was like, it was like my uniform in a way.
Yeah, now you got me thinking. I think it's like, people crave authenticity, right? They don't want like some fake thing. And an unfortunate reality a lot of times in just like work in the corporate world is people, they're just like, oh, I got to put on this front or like be somebody I'm not and just act this way because like this is what you're supposed to do. Like this is professional. Obviously, I'm not saying like go drop F-bombs and like cuss out your boss. Obviously, that's extreme. But like what I'm saying is like, don't put up such a high guard that like you're not you anymore. Like you're Christopher just as much as I'm Tyler before I'm a business development rep,
Yeah.
And like if you mix that, then like your performance, I think your performance is going to drop. You're not going to be as good as you can be. Not just because of the actual like you doing the work in such a way, but because the trickle effect in the rest of your day, like you're not authentic to yourself. It's going to bring you down. It's going to affect you. And it might bring down the other team members too, because they can tell you're like, oh, you're just saying something to like fill the airspace right now. Like how's the weather? Or like, just filling up, like saying something without saying anything, just be you. If you have something to say, like say it. And if it's helpful for the team, say it. Like, and if you don't like it, like who cares? Like you're more important than like what someone's opinions are. Like, as long as you're not being an a-hole or like mean to somebody, like it's fine.
Yeah. It reminds me of the girl that we were hanging out with yesterday that absolutely had no filter.
Oh yeah.
And high energy. But we talked about it after she left. We're like, dude, she was being herself.
Didn't care. It was just sick,
And we both had like a respect.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, that was crazy. That person was loaded with energy, and we literally had to like come down after it. But holy shit. Do you see that?
It's raining.
Yeah, I thought it was like snowing. It's like,
That's a sick shot. I don't know if you can get the rain through there, but
does it look like it's raining? Because
it's epic. This is one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen.
yeah, that's why I just had to stop and be like, you know? Dude, beautiful. What a beautiful city, beautiful day. Really lucky with the way that today turned out. I was truthfully, I was a little bit nervous too beforehand. I'm just like, dude, I get nervous about all this stuff, but just putting, I have all these interests in, talking about all of this stuff. And in my thoughts leading up to this conversation, I was like, I want to put Tyler in a position that he's comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say anything or do anything to make you uncomfortable. And I'm always, just probably, like you guys have both said, like overthinking, like overthinking all of it. But
dude, yeah, it's no worries, man. It's like the first time I've said anything. It's like me the last time. And also too, like, I think it's all, don't worry about being comfortable, because I think what comforted me the most is like hearing from somebody like really close to my life. They were like, cause I was talking about like, oh, I've never done a podcast before. I'm kind of going from like 0 to like the max as it pertains to like the subject matter in some ways. Like, would you have any like tips or advice? And they were just like, yeah, like, I mean, if you're going on there to like talk about whatever to help people, like everything's gonna be fine. Like, why would you be nervous? Like, that's what you're the best at. Like, that's what it's all you've known since like, for the most part, like since like finishing school and like even from your childhood, like you were just intentional about helping people.
Yeah.
Just go out there, just do that. And like, if there's anything too, like that the audience listens to and they're like, this isn't helpful for me. Like, you don't have to bring it with you, you just like take it, observe it, move it on. But there is like 1 or 2 pieces in there, like take it for what it is, like how it might help you, think about it how you want. And like make sure like if there's anything here, like in this podcast, it like best serves you, I would say.
That's the thing is there's so many, and I think back to the first 2 episodes that I've recorded, so many like little nuggets that have already been insanely helpful for me. And obviously like I have to probably put in some sort of warning. Like, we're not doctors, we're not therapists. We're literally just human beings who have lived through it. And
I'm just a dude.
Yeah. Just a dude. And, but talking about the experiences helps, and it at least helps. I mean, it helps me. I mean, I hope, this has helped you in many ways. But what is, I guess in closing, like what is, one thing, if I could, like, what's either the first thing that just popped in your mind when I said that, but what is one thing that you want, people to carry from this conversation?
I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but just like to reemphasize, because the closing is so important, right? That's what people a lot of times it's the intro and conclusion people listen to only on things. I would say it's going to come back to that self-responsibility piece. Like, if you're dealing with whatever situation, it could be external, meaning it's outside of you. It could be internal, meaning, it's dealing directly with your own brain, like your own thoughts, like your own mental health, whatever you want to call it, is to like, remember that, like, I guess twofold. One, focus on the things that you can control, not the things that you can't. And may you have the clairvoyance to know the difference.
Clairvoyance. What does that word mean?
Like clarity.
Clarity. Beautiful. You said that earlier.
Insight.
I didn't want to cut it off, but.
And then the second, no, you're all good. The second would be, oh, now I'm forgetting. I was saying.
Damn it. I did it.
No.
Good vocab word. Just such a beautiful word. The one thing that you wanted people to carry away from this conversation.
Then I was saying that I was saying internal versus external.
This one's on me.
The clairvoyance to know the difference.
And then the third thing, I fucked you up. My bad.
Hold on, we can edit this. I'll go down the loop again. Okay, I'll just start it from the scratch. Okay, so I would say if it was like, it's going to come back to that self-responsibility component for sure. I know I touched on it a little bit before, but what I would say, like, regardless of whether it's internal or external, when I say external, I mean like if it's something happening outside of you, or if it's internal, something in your own brain, your own thoughts, your own feelings, emotions, mental health, whatever you want to call it, may you be able to focus on the things you can control and don't focus on the things that you can't. and maybe you have the clairvoyance to know the difference. So I think that will, take you a long way in the sense of just like, okay, well, if this XYZ thing is happening and I don't have any control over it, just let it happen how it happens. And then if there is something in your control, like how can you best go about that, and like assign the responsibility to yourself and just like remember that everything kind of comes down to you. Like it's just you, like no one's going to make the decisions for you. No one's going to like hold your hand for your entire life. Like at a certain point, you're going to have to be like, I'm the man, I'm the woman, I'm coming in here and I'm going to own this, like whatever it is, or just life more broadly, obviously. But I can't like emphasize that component enough, because I see a lot of people that like they might be in like a tough spot, like a situation. They're kind of looking for something to blame or like kind of put it off to. It might even be like in a subconscious manner. Like they might not even be realizing they're doing it.
Yeah.
But like truly, like once you get to a point where you're like, everything's you, and like you take the responsibility for stuff, and like you are your best advocate, and you're not beating yourself up, you're not tearing yourself down, and you're like, they're actually your number one supporter. Like it's, it all fall into place. And maybe not immediately overnight. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you are conscientious of that over time, you'll build the habit, it'll become a practice. And then before you know it, like, and it's simple, right? Like it doesn't have to be something about like so deep as we're going. It's like, could be like just daily things. Like we were talking about making the bed earlier.
So I was literally just thinking that.
You were thinking the same thing? Yeah. It's like the responsibility for that. I was like, okay, well, I didn't do it today, so I'm getting into a messy bed that won't feel as good. Or I did do it today. Like, good job, Tyler. Like, or good job, Chris. I made the bed today.
Yeah.
And it feels good, and you get in there. Whereas like if, you had a maid or some, like your mom or like someone or like your girlfriend or your wife, like I'm not saying I would complain, but like it doesn't hit the same, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when whatever it is you want in life, just realize that you got it in your control to like a pretty large degree, and just go out and do everything you can, and like never talk down on yourself and tell yourself you can't do it.
You've got the power to be your biggest fan of your
yeah, exactly. Like, and that for me, that's true freedom. And I think everybody wants, like we say, like on the foundation of like this actually like very founding city for our nation, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Is like, I think you can get there when you take a lot more self-responsibility for things, and don't be emotionally attached. I guess that's what I say when I mean self-responsibility is like also not getting overly emotionally attached as well, and bringing yourself down in that. It's like all one and the same, just kind of being stoic, being calm, and just being dialed in.
Yeah. Dude, absolutely fascinating.
Which isn't to say, as one last thought, that everything's perfect. You're going to have slip-ups and things are going to happen. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
So chill. I love it. Well, dude, first off, thank you. I have so much love for you. I have so much respect for you. And as I've already mentioned, I really look up to you, which I love saying that when people, and again, maybe this is just in my own head, and age doesn't really matter, but like when I meet people that are younger than me, I'm like, bro, like you have it so figured out. Like 3 years ago when I was in your place, I was fucking all over.
That's how I feel now. Yeah. It never goes. Yeah. You're always trying to be more optimized.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's funny. I still do feel the same way. And that's a good way to put it. It's like, it doesn't really go away, but you got both, you know what I mean? And we talked yesterday about black and white, heaven and hell, love and hate, genius and crazy. Like it's all one and the same at the end of the day in a lot of different ways. And it's beautiful. At the end of the day, it's beautiful. Just like, it's funny. This is probably a perfect representation. It is absolutely stunning over here with these beautiful clouds on the right. And then you can literally see over to the left, it's raining.
Yeah.
You can see like it blanketing across the sky. So a great way to end. And the way that I always like to end, always third time.
Harmonious balance.
Yeah. The way I like to end is a call for donations because we don't have any advertisements. There's nobody making money off any of this stuff. But would love to raise some money for an organization that, you care deeply about and one that you briefly mentioned earlier. And I'm fascinated to hear more about it. Yeah,
totally. And thank you for extending that opportunity. And also thank you so much for having me. I know it's a very cliche thing to say. And also thank you for the audience to listening as well. I hope that this was really valuable for you and you got a lot of positive direction. If not, then just learning lessons and things that you can take moving forward. But as it pertains to the donations, there's a group called Vituity Cares. We'll slap a link right here for the donate link. But essentially, kind of got introduced to them through a family friend of ours. He's a physician, has a really awesome story as like an immigrant coming from the Philippines. And I guess I won't go down that rabbit hole. It's a long story, but awesome dude. And as part of his like giving back to the community, he works as a member of this Vituity Cares. They do like homeless healthcare, like in the streets. Like they'll go give haircuts. They'll check on people's like skin lesions, like any rashes they might have, just medical checkups with like real medical personnel, which is super rad. And I think that like, you know, even if you got a lot of bad stuff going on, you should be able to like get something taken care of, or at least get a little bit of help.
Yeah.
So it's super cool. They're out there, they're doing all that good stuff. Doesn't matter like who shows up, they're there to help. And it'd be super cool. I actually have a couple of close loved ones that have volunteered and they've gotten involved as well. And it's a very fulfilling thing for them, and helpful for them as they go throughout their lives. So actually, you know, Vituity, it's not just San Diego, they do it everywhere. But if you want to get involved, you can actually just look up vituitycares.org.
Vituity.
That's Vituity is VITUITY cares, CARES.org. Maybe you can get involved for yourself, maybe see how you can help out. Hairdressers calling because they need haircuts done. And, or if you want to donate, you can donate as well. Or if you just want to give your best wishes, you can do that too. Yeah. It's up to you, man.
Dude, always appreciate it. All works. And yeah, thank you to you. Thank you to the wonderful producer, Max. And
I thank Max a lot. Thank you, Max.
Max is huge. But thank you, as you mentioned, to everybody listening, because at the end of the day,
yeah, it's for you guys. It's not for us. It's for you guys.
As this thing grows, it can be for both, you know?
That's true. That's true.
Because I'm moved today. Like I'm never going to be the same. This is huge. This is so helpful. It's therapeutic. And I hope it's, you know, not only therapeutic for us, but therapeutic for everybody else. And the topics that we talk about are never the easiest or the cleanest. And it is a lot of 0 to 100 kind of level stuff. But it's all these things that need to be talked about and don't get talked about enough. So
absolutely. Yeah, I guess closing thought, go out there, everyone, dominate, and do what you love. And speaking of love, I love you. So thank you.
I love you all too.